Okay, buddy. I was just trying to cheer us up, so go ahead. Put on some old sad bastard music, see if I care.
I care. That's it.
You can't let that happen to me.
Welcome to the Young Turks. I'm Anna Kasparian, and I believe that today is Friday, which means that we are about to drop it. Power panel time. Joining me on the first hour power panel is John Iadarola, who will be leading the first hour, and our wonderful guest, Ramesh Srinivasan.
Great to be with you guys. I've never been on with you, John, so.
Really?
Join you. Yeah.
Oh, okay. We've talked enough before that I just assumed we'd done the show before.
I just feel like we're connected already.
There you go. Yeah. Well, that's going to be tested through the course of this hour.
So in hour two, we will have a whole new panel. Michael Brooks from the Michael Brooks Show will be joining in, and so will our very own Mark Thompson. So I'm really excited to have them on as well. Lots of great discussions to get to. We have a fun event to plug for next week. Ramesh and I will get to that in just a minute. But before we get to anything, I do think it's important to just give you guys some notes about the programming of this show, because one thing that matters to me probably most is the integrity of this program and the fact that we believe in giving you honest, truthful facts to any story without any type of conflict of interest. So with that said, as we had shared with you yesterday, Cenk Uygur is running for Congress. As a result, I will now have editorial control of the main show. Okay, so I will be making decisions about the content, and it's important for you guys to know that he has absolutely no editorial input whatsoever while he runs for Congress. Cenk will not be discussing or promoting his campaign on this show while he is a host. However, if we bring him on as a guest, we will interview him similar to how we interview other candidates who run in various races throughout the country, okay? We will interview him as a guest. That is when he can talk about his campaign. But for the purposes of the main show, when he is hosting, he will not talk about his campaign. We will not talk about his campaign. Okay, no favorable coverage for it. Also, the network plans to report on his campaign just as it does for other progressive candidates. So just wanted to give you guys that note because it's important for us to maintain the integrity and the true objectivity of what we cover on this show. When I say objectivity, I'm talking about the actual facts of the story. When it comes to opinion, that's a completely different thing. As a company, we do not do company endorsements, but our hosts are free to endorse politicians, endorse candidates as they wish on their own. Okay?
Yes.
All right.
Sounds good.
So with that said, why don't we move on to our first story? There's a lot going on today with the impeachment investigation. There's another day of open hearings. So John, take it away.
Oh, one added little thing to what you're saying, just because in response to your tweets yesterday about it, I got a few questions about the damage report. I just want to reassure everybody, there's no changes happening to the damage report.
Right.
So if people were worried that that meant that it was going away or something like that, no, it's not.
Yeah, damage report is still, it's an incredibly important part of the network.
That's an exaggeration.
No, it's not an exaggeration.
I'm kidding.
I'm joining you next week, man.
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
So we're gonna make it.
That's true. Actually, you're gonna be taking over. I'm gonna be gone.
Oh, that's
Kidding.
the new role? Oh yeah.
No, but it should be fun.
And by the way, John is gonna be filling in for Cenk while he's out campaigning. But he's still going to be able to come in and host. He thinks. We'll see.
Yeah.
But just wanted to give you guys that info.
Yeah, I'm going to be like planting the seeds that will stop him from returning, but we'll see. He's still going to try probably. But anyway, the coup is underway. Okay, with that, why don't we launch into the big news of the day?
And there is news of a coup in hour 2, but
an
not
actual
right now.
one, yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Not this one. This is constitutional. The impeachment inquiry continues. This time with former ambassador to Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch. Now, she's an important figure, not necessarily for what she can reveal about the attempted quid pro quo with the president of Ukraine, because she was ousted from that position before that began, but because of the process that led to her being pulled out. And just in case you're not familiar with her and her history, she had already been removed from her post in Ukraine when all of those back and forths were going on. But Democrats say that she was the first domino to fall in this story, a model diplomat who lost her job because of corrupt people who then opened the door for more corruption that politically benefited Trump. That's sort of the narrative going into today. So as we talk about this, we're gonna reveal some of what she said about the changes she saw happening to the State Department during her tenure. And then we're also gonna analyze to what extent were the Republicans able to fight back against the narrative that we sort of alluded to there. So first, a couple of the big quotes from her testimony. She said on being pushed out, "Perhaps it was not surprising that when our anti-corruption efforts got in the way of a desire for profit or power, Ukrainians who preferred to play by the old corrupt rules sought to remove me. What continues to amaze me is that they found Americans willing to partner with them, and working together, they apparently succeeded in orchestrating the removal of a US ambassador. As foreign service professionals are being denigrated and undermined, the institution is also being degraded. This will soon cause real harm if it hasn't already. The State Department is being hollowed out from within at a competitive and complex time on the world stage. This is not a time to undercut our diplomats." And she went on to say, "Our Ukraine policy has been thrown into disarray, and shady interests the world over have learned how little it takes to remove an American ambassador who does not give them what they want." And she speculated a bit about how that might influence future foreign leaders in their interactions with US ambassadors, and how it might also influence US ambassadors, wondering what might I say either in formal negotiations or just in conversation with other workers that could end up with me being targeted for removal myself.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think what's particularly damning about Marie Yovanovitch's testimony, in addition to Giuliani's business associate's testimony, Lev Parnas, is the fact that everything that Trump is accusing the Bidens of doing is what he's actually doing, right? So Lev Parnas has shared through his lawyer that Giuliani wanted to essentially work with some of the Russian-backed Ukrainians to push out people like Marie Yovanovitch, because she was actually fighting hard to root out corruption in Ukraine. And so when Trump claims, and when Republicans who are defending Trump claim that all they wanted to do was investigate the Bidens because they were concerned about corruption, just understand that it is actually the exact opposite. The correct way of interpreting what's going on is that Trump worked with Giuliani and these two Soviet-born business associates of Giuliani's to push out ambassadors and US officials who were working hard to root out corruption in Ukraine. That's what's really going on.
Yeah, this administration is masterful in how it projects out, right? And it's able to project out and basically denigrate and disparage others for the crimes that they most heinously commit. And they're somehow able to do that because they have some sort of base or foundation in their support network that allow them to sustain themselves by basically calling others out for the things that they do worse than anyone else. I mean, just as an example, the call outs of Hillary Clinton, right, in 2016, when the level of corruption that we now found out that Trump and his team were engaging with, including with examples like Cambridge Analytica, were pretty profound and deep. So I think that's sort of something we see as a common theme when it comes to this presidency, which is more than anything the ability to just call others names and actually have an effect. They're effective at doing that. It actually undermines these folks, and that's the second point I want to make. That the level of intimidation that President Trump is able to get away with and his team is kind of remarkable. And why does that exist, and how does that exist, and how is that still effective now? And you can see in her tearful testimony from today how personally affected she is by all of this. And then the last major point I really want to make is another attack on a classic American institution, not one that is immune from critique. Right? There are lots of issues with our foreign service, just like there are even larger issues with our military. But if you notice, or with groups like NATO, for example, but if you notice actually what President Trump is able to do, again, quite effectively, is attack and root out and take away sort of the grounds and the bones and the real foundation of lifers in the foreign service, because that's an important point. She is not some sort of Republican or Democrat. She's sort of an institutional lifer who is now being undermined and was fired.
Yeah, and just briefly on the projection that you were talking about, that Rudy was sort of doing the same thing he was claiming the Bidens were doing. It's according to breaking news this morning, it's even more direct in that what we're finding out from Parnas and Fruman is that he was trying to personally profit from Ukrainian natural gas exploration. So it's exactly like he was going to also change his name legally to Hunter. That's how specific the projection is, which I thought. He doesn't have a Hunter face, He has a Rudy face.
And look, I mean, think about it. It's killing two birds with one stone. It's an effort to help serve the business interests of shady figures like Giuliani and his business associates. And then at the same time, it gives Trump the ability to dig up political dirt on a rival, on someone that he is going to run against in his reelection campaign. I mean, it's so obvious and it's so clear.
It's both strategic and sociopathic. I mean, it's sociopathic in the sense that you can just kind of continue to be obsessed with lining your pockets, having more power, lining the pockets of all your buddies, and who cares what the effects are. But it's actually quite strategic, and it's actually, and this is the thing that really does concern me, honestly, with these impeachment hearings. Different than the Mueller report, but some similarities, which is that all of this, in many ways, President Trump is quite effective in these moments. And how is that the case? Like, how does that come to be? How do these profound miscarriages of law that he represents end up not necessarily harming him that deeply, even if he does get impeached? I mean, that's a political question, but it's just something I want to put out there.
Well, I do want to give people at least a little bit of the actual testimony. So one of the most dramatic parts of this, along the way, the plot to get rid of Marie Yovanovitch involves a comment from the second phone call. So the first transcript that we got of Trump with the president of Ukraine talking about how she was going to go through some things. She was asked about that today at the hearing, and here's what she had to say.
What did you think when President Trump told President Zelensky and you read that you were going to go through some things?
I didn't know what to think, but I was very concerned.
What were you concerned about?
She's going to go through some things. It didn't sound good. It sounded like a threat.
Did you feel threatened?
I did.
Yeah, and I think, look, she was asked to sort of elaborate and she wasn't able to, and I think understandably so. I mean, what is she supposed to say? Well, it sounds like the president is threatening my physical safety. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, you're dealing with the most powerful person in the world, when you really think about it, telling another world leader that you're gonna go through some things. And it's coded language, but I think it's not so coded. You get a sense that it is a threat, right? Anyone would be fearful after hearing something like that. And remember, the reason why she's targeted, and I wanna keep repeating this because it goes against the ridiculous talking points you hear from the right wing. She's being targeted because she's actually trying to root out corruption in Ukraine.
Yeah, and we're also talking about a woman and not some sort of big politician, a sort of public servant, if you will. And you can imagine how terrifying that must be to her. And I guess to my comments earlier about, how is he so effective? He's so effective because these sorts of words are scary for people, because there are quite a few goons willing to carry out this president's agenda, as we've seen again and again. And that's the saddest and scariest part of all.
Jamal Khashoggi, a US resident who was a journalist for the Washington Post, was murdered,
chopped up,
and chopped up while he was still alive, by the way, because Saudi Prince Mohammed bin Salman ordered it, and Trump tried to help him cover it up. Let's be very clear. So anyone who's fearful of Trump and this administration has the right to be, because he would absolutely try to help one of his cronies or one of these goons from a foreign country cover up some type of violent crime or murder. And it's disgusting.
And look, she, as we've pointed out, she has served for 30 years under Republicans and Democrats. She does not appear to be a particularly partisan person.
That's right.
But she pays attention to the news, and when she heard that initially, she must have been thinking, well, this is a quote from Donald Trump. And if I look around the world, all of the leaders most likely to actually kill one of their critics, he has publicly praised every single one of them repeatedly and called their most barbaric actions strong and powerful and good leadership. And so, has Donald Trump killed anyone that we know? No, not necessarily his critics or anything like that. But he sure seems to admire the practice. And so if I were her, I certainly would have been worried.
And he has bragged about his ability to get away with almost anything, right?
Including murder.
Including murder. And in the case of our president, words do matter because they embolden and empower violence.
So just briefly, I want to give you one media reaction to this testimony, at least the early portion. And this was Chris Wallace of Fox News, who felt like she did a good job of presenting her case, and Republicans were largely ineffective in responding to try to derail that narrative.
Yovanovitch's basic story remained unchallenged and untouched, and that story is that she was a corruption fighter, that she was working with the Ukrainian government to try to improve relations, that she was the victim of a smear campaign by Rudy Giuliani and some of his associates, that she was taken out of the embassy, told at 1 o'clock in the morning, you better be on the next plane, and that while the Deputy Secretary of State said you did nothing wrong, she got no bolstering, no vote of confidence, no support from top people at the White House or at the State Department.
And I just want to remind everyone that when she was concerned about Trump targeting her, and when she had a conversation with the State Department about it, first of all, Mike Pompeo did nothing to defend her, even though Mike Pompeo had worked with her in the past and knew who she was and knew that she wasn't some shady person. But more importantly, she was told by Gordon Sondland, well, if you're concerned about your job, maybe tweet some praise to Donald Trump and that'll save you.
Maybe stay at his hotel or something. Gonna buy you a couple more weeks.
Run up the tab,
crazy.
right?
So that was one of the initial reactions, and from hardly a liberal or anything like that. Unfortunately, the testimony developed with Donald Trump weighing in individually. For that, we're gonna have to wait until after the break, though.
All right, so let's take a break. When we come back, I'm gonna read your comments and your live reads, and I have some fun news about an event that Ramesh and I will be doing next week. We'll be right back.
People work hard for what they have, and if you want more, you gotta do it yourself.
Stock stories bring headlines to life in an instant, whether you work on Wall Street or in Wichita. Stock report cards and professional analyst buy and sell ratings help gut check your thought process. Buy stock, take profits, and manage risk. And the Idea Feed is your daily one-stop investment shop with videos that unpack today's money-moving headlines in under 3 minutes, because you need ideas, not lectures. And live in-app chat from when you want to talk to someone, but you don't actually want to talk.
So what'd you think?
With unlimited commission-free stock trades and great ideas from real traders. Visit doe.com/TYT.
People still don't know what the word feminist actually means. Not even that, people are still angered by the word.
People think feminist is a bad word, but it's not.
There are gradations, there are different waves. The people who are against gender equality love to use like militant feminists as the representatives of all feminists. It's untrue.
I don't know why you'd be threatened by strong women unless you were an incredibly weak man. If you don't have equal rights, or you're not treated the same way, well, wouldn't you be angry?
The Monsanto Corporation continues to sell a herbicide called Roundup, but you should know that that herbicide is a potential killer. Recent studies have linked Roundup to significant increases in non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. That's a cancer that can be devastating to you and the people you love. While Roundup continues to cause cancer, Monsanto continues to make huge profits from the sale of Roundup. They will not take it off the market. If you or a loved one are exposed to Roundup at work or home and then developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, you may be entitled to financial compensation, and it's important for you to take action now and hold Monsanto accountable.
Cenk Uygur is not here today, which means that I will be able to talk during the show.
We'll see. We'll see.
Poor Cenk, under the bus.
My God, if Jesus came back, how much would the Republicans hate him? Now you have to give away all of your possessions to the poor. Steve King would be like, oh, Weezy.
Cenk is oddly, scarily competitive.
Oh, it's insane. I play basketball against him. It's just like, how are you good at this?
The liberal mom says, Mark Thompson, have you ever thought about doing one of those tapes that soothe people to sleep? Like Mark Thompson reads the phone book. I'd buy it.
If you'll buy it, I'll do it.
Emilio D'Amelio writes in, John, you are so thick. I love you. That's what he wrote.
Pork Chop Express writes in and says John Iadarola needs a new jacket.
Whoa.
Those 24-inch pythons are about to burst out of his sleeve.
Gun, baby. You know, the two people here said that their moms were both in love with you over Beauty and the Beast.
That's an improvement. I usually get grandmothers.
The Hour of Fire is brought to you by Brooke, and Brooke.
Yes, Brooke's got it.
Okay.
Take it.
All
you
right.
guys know I really like compliments.
Charlie Turk.
No, wait a minute, don't you dare.
Chemical castration when we return from the break.
All right, so that's it. We will settle it.
I want to say this.
Did Anna comment on my tan yet? No, she hasn't. Scandal at TYT.
You're a good bosser.
But Anna did say that I come in here today with a fresh mind. That's all I'm about. I'm about a fresh mind.
I can't with you right now.
Okay? She just can't. She can, but nonetheless, we have to for another 3 hours. I'm back, baby. Let's rip in the Republicans. See, don't miss the live show.
That's great.
Tell people, if you're a member, you get the whole live show whenever you want, because this stuff doesn't go into any of the clips.
Welcome back to TYT. Anna, Ramesh, and John with you. Before I read some member comments in TYT Lives, I wanted to just quickly plug an event that Ramesh and I will be doing next week. So Ramesh has an awesome book out that I highly recommend everyone check out. It's called Beyond the Valley. And so we're gonna have a conversation about your book at Skylight Books in Los Feliz, okay? So the address is 1818 Vermont Avenue. For those of you who are living in Los Angeles and you're interested in going, it'll take place next Thursday at 7:30 p.m. So please check that out. You can go to rameshsrinivasan.org/Beyond the Valley to learn more about the book and about the events. So check that out. Also, Georgia debate, that's happening next week, and we will be providing special debate coverage for you all. We'll go live at 11 p.m. Eastern time, and on the panel we'll have John Iadarola, Ida Rodriguez, J.R. Jackson, and myself. So you can watch it live by going to tyt.com/live. And there will also be a Revolution rally on November 20th in Atlanta. To find out more about that, just go to tyt.com/rally. All right, now a few member comments. I'm an Angry Gumball says, yay for the announcement. I love the integrity of TYT. Thank you, so do I. I also love avoiding any type of illegal campaign contribution or anything like that.
Yeah, totally.
You know,
That's also important. Can you imagine we find ourselves in like hearings, like
roommate with Roger Stone.
Oh God.
Oh, we have a story on that. All right, let's move on. Juan writes in and says, "That's why I love Anna. She's always thinking about the integrity of the show and network. Thank you so much." Top Cat writes in and says, "She literally has been caught in the crossfire," meaning Yovanovitch. "While representing the US, she showed courage and continued on her posts. But when the president of the country threatened her," and then the tweet ends. All right, it is pretty devastating, but we actually have more on the Yovanovitch story, so John, take it away.
We do. Okay, let's pick it back up there. While the former ambassador to Ukraine was testifying earlier today, Donald Trump, who decided he's just gonna start tweeting at her. And so he started tweeting things about her past. And because we live in a digital age, Adam Schiff actually cut into the questions to ask her about some of the things that Donald Trump was saying. Here's what happened.
As we sit here testifying, the president is attacking you on Twitter. And I'd like to give you a chance to respond. I'll read part of one of his tweets. "Everywhere Marie Yovanovitch went turned bad. She started off in Somalia. How did that go? You've shown the courage to come forward today and testify. Notwithstanding the fact you were urged by the White House or State Department not to, notwithstanding the fact that, as you testified earlier, the president implicitly threatened you in that call record, and now the president in real time is attacking you. What effect do you think that has on other witnesses' willingness to come forward and expose wrongdoing?"
Well, it's very intimidating.
It's designed to intimidate, is it not?
I mean, I can't speak to what the president is trying to do, but I think the effect is to be intimidating.
I think so as well. And so immediately that derailed most of the conversation about this. I know that Donald Trump had wanted us to be talking about the summary release of the first call, which we're gonna get to a little bit later on. But immediately, conversation around Donald Trump was his apparent attempt to tamper with this witness. And because that became a big part of the conversation, immediately responses from the right attempted to defend him from that charge. And some of them are a little bit laughable. Jim Jordan, noted scholar, said that the tweet can't be witness intimidation because she wouldn't have known about the attack if Adam Schiff hadn't read it to her.
I think she was pretty familiar with the attack, and that was made abundantly clear when she realized that she was a target of Donald Trump's, spoke to the State Department about it in an effort to get the State Department to defend her, and they told her no. And then she was told by Gordon Sondland, well, if you want to keep your job, maybe you should praise Donald Trump on Twitter.
Yeah, and by the way, like if Schiff hadn't read it to her, I think that it might have gotten to her anyway. I mean, he's got 65 million Twitter followers.
2/3 of which are apparently bots also. But
they can retweet things.
No, definitely, no, that's part of the strategy. But I do want to say that, it's not an unpredictable experience to have Trump attack you if you deviate from what he wants in the public eye.
Yeah.
And so it is a highly predictable and expected and unfortunate event that occurred to her.
But not one that we should probably worry about for reasons that'll become clear from Chad Pergram, Fox News senior producer, who responded to claims that this might be witness intimidation by saying, now when we look at the US Constitution and look at Article 2, Section 4, it doesn't say anything about witness intimidation.
Wow. Wow.
These are the best minds that the right has. Senior producers at Fox News, the representative who was moved from one committee to another so he could be there to issue forth nuggets of wisdom well, if he hadn't read it.
And that statement, John, actually says that that it's very clearly indicated by that statement that witness intimidation is okay.
It appears to think so.
Yeah, because
it's not directly in the impeachment section of the Constitution. I got news for Chad Pergram, it's still against the law. You still can't do it.
Yeah,
that's my point.
Okay, so in any other case, is witness intimidation okay? In any other case,
it's illegal.
It's illegal, exactly.
Well, we should know
that's the reason why Roger Stone was prosecuted in the first place and was found guilty. We'll get to that story later.
Yes, exactly.
But
yeah, I can't wait to get to that too. But first, let's go to eventually more time passes by and Donald Trump is asked about this claim that he might be trying to tamper with the witness, and here is how he responded.
What do you say to Democrats that say you were witness tampering this morning when you made that tweet?
You don't want to talk about transparency?
Well,
no, I'll talk about transparency. I like transparency here, and I'm the most transparent president in history. And I'll tell you about what tampering is. Tampering is when a guy like Shifty Schiff doesn't let us have lawyers. Tampering is when Schiff doesn't let us have witnesses, doesn't let us speak. I've been watching today. For the first time, I started watching, and it's really sad when you see people not allowed to ask questions. So you know what? I have the right to speak. I have freedom of speech, just as other people do. But they've taken away the Republicans' rights.
Okay, none of that is true.
I know, none
Feel
of it
free
is
to
true.
explain.
He's, by the way, he is free to testify. No one's stopping him from testifying. What I mean.
Well, someone is.
It's just not
him.
who he thinks it is. Exactly. It's people on his side that want him to avoid having to testify. But more importantly, look, these are now open public hearings. Even when they were closed door hearings, you have Republicans on these relevant committees doing the investigation alongside Democrats. So the way that he's trying to spin this as nothing more than a left-wing witch hunt is ridiculous. In fact, I mean, if you watch the actual public hearings, which don't let anyone tell you, oh, nothing's going on during these hearings. The revelations that have already come out from these hearings are huge, including actual testimony that links Donald Trump to conversations about the investigations into the Bidens, okay? So Gordon Sondland and Donald Trump had a conversation on July 26th based on 2 US embassy officials about the investigations into the Bidens, okay? Yeah. That directly links Trump to this whole case and how he wanted to dig up dirt on his political opponent. But look, my point is, they keep making this seem like it's an unfair process when Republicans have been part of the process since day one.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're asking questions as well.
Yeah.
The evidence is pretty rock solid so far, and in that sense, it's somewhat different than the Mueller report. And there is something, I think, strategic in terms of President Trump's messaging. He's quite good at messaging in an effective way that works for his own political aims. I've noticed this for many years, in the sense that he actually often doesn't just deny certain kinds of accusations, but he actually says the exact opposite of what the reality is. Always, and there's something about the nature of messaging in that way that works really well to kind of rile his supporters up and to actually legitimate these insane claims that everything that is critical of him is a witch hunt.
Yeah, and a lot of it is similar to what you'll hear on right-wing shows. It's just basically whining constantly that you're the victim while also claiming that you're an alpha male. Yeah. So there's 2 things there. One, he's implying that the process is unfair, that the rules are unfair. Well, I would take that up with the Republicans who established those rules, because they're the ones that set out the way that this is going to run. And then the other side is, I don't get to talk, the people I want to talk don't get to talk. As we alluded to, Donald Trump, you are free to go testify tomorrow. I think they'll find time for you anytime you want, but you're not gonna do that, obviously, because you're an idiot, but you're smart enough to know that you're an idiot and to know that you would definitely get yourself in serious trouble. But fine, you're not gonna testify. Okay, who do you want? When you say our people, well, Mick Mulvaney, well, why are you blocking him from testifying? Rudy Giuliani, feel free, let's have Rudy sit in the stand. Pompeo maybe, no, you don't want that either. No, you don't want any of these people to testify. Right. What he wants to do is block any cooperation whatsoever and then use his own obstruction to claim that they're being unfair against him.
That's exactly the model. And actually yesterday he mentioned multiple times that he wasn't even paying attention to the hearings, yet he tweeted over 30 times about it. So
yeah, a lot today.
Again, you just say the opposite of reality, and it functions in this media ecosystem and this political ecosystem.
Why don't we go to one more quick video of Trump, a follow-up to the earlier.
Sir, with your freedom, were you trying to intimidate Ambassador Yovanovitch?
I just want to have I want freedom of speech. That's a political process. The Republicans have been treated very badly. It's a disgrace and it's an embarrassment to our nation.
Do you believe your tweets and your words?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Sir, do you believe your tweets and words can be intimidating?
Quiet.
Sir, do you believe your tweets and words can be intimidating?
I don't think so at all.
Yeah, you gotta love Donald Trump yelling at this woman to be quiet. But
he believes in freedom of speech. He just wants to protect freedom of speech, which is why he's shouting down a reporter who's asking him a question.
That's a great point.
And not for women.
Right.
You know?
Is this I don't remember him ever claiming that freedom of speech is his defense in this. I wonder if he's going to eventually claim that his comments to the Ukrainian president, hey, freedom of speech, I can say whatever I want. And as you've pointed out in terms of messaging, if you say that freedom of speech is what you want, the right wing will love it, obviously. But it's a weird tactic. I haven't heard him use that before during this impeachment inquiry.
Maybe he's having a conversation with Mr. Braden recovery mode ideas. You know?
Well, he's in recovery mode right now, as you'll get into in the second hour.
Yep.
Well, with that, why don't we turn to one other related topic, and that has to do with we're in this impeachment inquiry because of initially concerns over his second call with the Ukrainian president, but that wasn't the only one, and that's where we return to the story. Donald Trump decided to perhaps try to take control of a news cycle today by releasing a summary of his first call with the Ukrainian president. So this first call took place in April after Zelensky's presidential election. The second, the one that you're more familiar with, was in July after Zelensky's party won a majority in parliament. Now, what's interesting about it is less what's in the actual summary and more what's not in the summary, but was previously promised. The White House readout, a summary of the call released hours after it occurred, so this is back in April, claimed that Trump, quote, underscored the unwavering support of the United States for Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity, phrases that he has literally never said, nor does he understand, within its internationally recognized borders, and expressed his commitment to work together with President-elect Zelensky and the Ukrainian people to implement reforms that strengthen democracy, increase prosperity, and root out corruption. Now, those are specific references to specific things, but the transcript shows him congratulating him on his recent win, promising to arrange a White House visit with him, and recounting the large number of Ukrainian women who participated in Trump's Miss Universe competitions.
Jesus Christ.
It's got that, but it doesn't have any efforts to address Ukrainian corruption, economic prosperity, or democratic institutions, nor does he even allude to its efforts to beat back the Russian occupation of the Ukrainian territory of Crimea. And indeed, it is difficult to have a substantive back and forth with a foreign leader about rooting out corruption when the word corruption does not even appear in the transcript itself.
It's interesting. I mean, his interpretation of that first phone call with Zelensky was very different from what it turned out to actually be, right? I mean, it was interesting to hear him constantly talk about maybe I'm gonna release the first call. You just watch. I'm gonna release the first call. I'm gonna release the first call. I'm gonna release the first. And you're like, okay, then release the first call. Why are you latching onto this and not actually doing it? And the reason why he didn't actually do it is because there's nothing there. There's nothing there that actually helps him out.
Yeah.
No, I know we've talked about this before, Anna. I mean, so many aspects of this presidency are rooted in the personal and the shallow and the soap operatic, right?
Yeah, the reality show.
The reality TV show. This is our first reality TV show president, hopefully the last.
Yeah.
But so you can it's actually extremely revealing when you see the actual transcripts of these phone calls and how absent they are any aspect of governance, history, institutions, democracy, diplomacy, economy.
Yeah.
It's just about chicks at my pageant, you know?
Actually,
and also, by the way, I just want to clarify, no one has seen actual transcripts because the actual transcript of July 25th phone conversation between Trump and Zelensky was immediately moved to a top secret server by White House lawyers because they were so concerned about the conversation. We've yet to see it. And so we have a summary of the call that was released by the Trump administration under the assumption that the exchange between Trump and Zelensky wasn't that damaging. They thought that wouldn't be so damaging.
Yeah.
It's insane. So if they thought that was an okay portion of the call, what does the unredacted, actual verbatim transcript of that call look like?
Some level of all this is considered normal and acceptable.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, so you mentioned the sort of reality show nature of this. So I just want to, look, we referenced the Miss Universe thing, but this is what actually was in the summary of the transcript. When I owned Miss Universe, they always had great people. Ukraine was always well represented. And then the transcript says that he winked a couple of times at the phone, not realizing that the president couldn't see him. But anyway, yeah, he actually referenced that. In another instance, he claimed that a Ukrainian woman had won Miss Universe, but no Ukrainian has ever won the competition despite several times making it to the last round.
Russian, Ukrainian, Belarus, Lithuania.
I just love the Business Insider had to research that to see if they'd ever won. But you reference the, like, I'm gonna show you the first one, like, because really he did want to tantalize.
Yeah.
Like, don't look at this former ambassador. I've got something more exciting coming. But he even got sort of tripped up in trying to oversell this, which J.R. Jackson noted in one of his best recent JR rated mashups.
What they want is they want my first phone call. I had another phone call, and it's a very important phone call. And it came to my attention last night that they want the first phone call. Now, the problem I have in releasing the first phone call, because that was actually the second phone call, and it's a perfect call. But they found out there's another phone call, and that's the first phone call. And they want it released, and we're considering that. Which one? That I don't know. I don't know about any call.
Wow.
Nothing was said.
Yeah.
There was no information communicated
Over
by
the
that.
helicopter din, the helicopter noise din.
Yeah, chopper talk's a bad time to communicate anything, especially
Unless you're trying
when
to communicate nothing.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
But I mean, when you really think about it, what was he supposed to say about the first phone call in regard to the substance? I was talking about Ukrainian models. I was talking about the pageants and the very strong women.
Yeah.
Many strong women in the hot, very hot. There's really nothing he can reveal about the call that would actually help mitigate the damage that was done by the second call.
But that actually is one of their tactics right now. So what I have been reading is all the right wingers are like, look at this first call. You know what you won't find? You won't find anything about Biden, anything about a possible quid pro quo. There's nothing there. And so you leftists, this proves that he wasn't trying to set up some sort of quid pro quo, which is just a little bit too clever because you should really take note of the timing of these calls. So the original call that we were talking about was a couple months into Joe Biden's candidacy, and that's when he apparently wanted to set up this quid pro quo. This first call took place in April. Importantly, it took place 4 days before Joe Biden launched his presidential run. And so it doesn't necessarily prove what you think it proves, that before Biden was in the race, he wasn't interested in Ukrainian corruption. And once Biden had gotten into the race, suddenly he's really interested in CrowdStrike and Burisma and all of that. So I just want to make that timeline really clear.
Well put.
Thank you. Okay, with that, why don't we take a break? When we come back, Roger Stone is he's going to be finding a new place to stay.
Dance party.
Exactly. And Pete Buttigieg, what are you doing, buddy?
Yeah.
We got that for you after this.
You know, old school's pitched to me from Jank. It'll just be me, you, Jesus, Ben, and maybe Michael. And we're like, okay, cool. I can do that every week. As you can see, me, Jesus, Ben, Jank.
This is my problem with Forever 21. This is like a really cool turtleneck. Like, it looks nice, it looks soft, it looks professional. I can wear it to work. And then you pick it up and turn it around and the back says taco booty. And it's like, what?
When you make the order, it says, don't exceed $20.01. So I'll just order literally anything to get it as close to that as I possibly can.
I'm sorry that I ordered $45 worth of food and got an email saying, sir, would you like to rethink that? What are you talking about?
And she was like, does mom know you curse that much? And I was like, I didn't curse at all in the movie. I played silent mom.
Right.
If you're looking for a heart attack, the short way, baby.
Wrong. I did put mayonnaise on it. I'm the most in shape, overweight person you'll find.
That's right.
We're in Hollywood.
I
Raise
know.
your hand if you're not a vegan.
Okay.
See, nobody.
He's like Kevin with Ben Affleck. He's like afraid to text me.
He was like, why didn't you answer my call? I called you 39 times.
Yuck.
But what makes you stop right before 40? You know, what makes you say,
So that's wrong
nah,
number.
man, I ain't doing that no more. I'm cool.
And I called you back on the air. And I was like, okay, Kevin Smith, big shot. What the you said you'd come on and you didn't come on.
I'm sure I took that very well.
Yeah, you did. You called me back the next day and said, I thought it was 7 a.m.
I don't mean to get upset.
I was in hell. I was just like, oh my God, the theater's empty, nobody's here. Everyone on screen keeps fucking cursing. Why did I let this happen? And the whole thing looks like it was shot through a glass of milk. My mom's gonna be so mad.
And there's now deep fake porn. I don't know if you guys have heard of this.
I heard of it. I just had some in the car.
I'll tell you who I'm not
and Ben Mankiewicz. Have you guys ever felt that?
Not ever.
But I imagine you could be famous and not give a shit. But it's tough to be a human and not give a shit.
We got to let the podcast guys go to tyt.com/join to become a member, get the whole show. And now it's just the three of us.
That's it.
Okay,
This is the intimate hour.
By the way, the last half hour of this, we're not even rolling.
He's a bad neighbor.
Neighbors know I'll be watching. We're always
Please
going
tell
to be.
me you do not waste your wife's time with this ridiculously stupid argument.
The Bad News Bears is a movie that taught an entire generation how to not win. How to lose gracefully.
See, I watch movies.
Kingsley.
I'm done with both of you.
Once Greg starts laughing, I can't stop. We're out of time. So
Are we?
Yeah, I know.
That was 90?
Yeah.
I was just getting started.
And I was just gonna ask you about getting high.
Snoogans, Snoochie Boochies.
And members, of course, you can get the whole damn thing. tyt.com join and free trial. I'm old school with the old folks.
John, come back.
Get ready for it. Get ready for it.
The Monsanto Corporation continues to sell a herbicide called Roundup, but you should know that that herbicide is a potential killer. Recent studies have linked Roundup to significant increases in non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. That's a cancer that can be devastating to you and the people you love. While Roundup continues to cause cancer, Monsanto continues to make huge profits from the sale of Roundup. They will not take it off the market. If you or a loved one are exposed to Roundup at work or home and then developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, you may be entitled to financial compensation, and it's important for you to take action now and hold Monsanto accountable.
Breaking news with Brett Ehrlich. This is Brett Ehrlich with breaking news with Brett Ehrlich. Bernie Sanders wants to break Wall Street, and he wants to break it real bad.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Young Turks. Anna, Ramesh, and John with you. I wanted to do a live read about some programming, and this is a show that I really love on our network, so I highly recommend you guys check it out. Brett Ehrlich hosts Happy Half Hour. It's a once a week show, and it truly is a happy half hour, okay? So he covers all sorts of fun news, none of this depressing stuff that we usually cover on the main show, and it's just a good respite from all the negativity that you get in the traditional news cycle. So please check it out. It's airing tonight. You can check it out on YouTube. So he actually had the good news. It's a good news show. YouTuber and dancer Brittany, how do you say? Marcicek was on. Okay, I want to make sure I don't mispronounce her name. And it's available video on demand for members. So if you're a member, you can check it out in the archives whenever you want. If you're not a member, you can help support this show by going to tyt.com/join.
It is a lot of fun.
He is.
If you haven't watched it, there is a character on that show who is both a moose and a toilet.
Yes, moose toilet.
And Brett's a character too, huh?
He is, he is. Brett, half comedian, half toilet.
Oh my God. All right, so member comments. BWP120 says, love Ramesh's contributions, even bought one of his books, can't wait to read it.
Oh, it's so nice, thank you.
I bathe in a very stable genius's tears says, oh, I love this strategy. Get Trump's tweet read into the record in real time. This should allow new charges to be easily proven. Yeah, that's never been done in these types of investigations before, Chickenfoot says, while I was listening to today's hearings, I could not believe when they read Trump's tweet live while the hearing was in progress. This is witness tampering. So I actually didn't get a chance to read watch the full public hearing today. But does anyone know who read the tweet first? Was it Republicans or was Adam Schiff the first to read it?
He was the first that I saw, but it's possible someone else referenced it.
That's an interesting take, yeah. WV Truth Seeker says, Trump claims he is the most transparent person, which is a laugh, since he's refusing to release documents or his taxes. So in a lot of ways, first of all, you're right, but in a lot of ways, he is transparent, but he's accidentally transparent.
He's psychologically transparent.
Right, like he says the quiet parts out loud all the time. Like when he admits that he is willing to sell weapons to the Saudis or work with the Saudis because of business dealings. Like it's insane that he just says it out loud and it's not a big deal. So in one regard, I think it's a good thing because he really does reinforce and confirm things that we had already suspected about government officials. It's just that he's so dumb, he doesn't realize that these things are wrong.
Well, he's made a couple of profound comments over the years. I don't like to praise President Trump, but they're kind of incredible. Like, I remember on the Republican debate stage, 4 years ago, I paid all of you, I bought you all out. I've given all money to all your campaigns. You're all gonna do whatever I want you to do. That was one. And then another was like, I would have taken the oil, which is exactly what he's been talking about in Kurdistan.
Right, absolutely. In Syria, yeah,
might
absolutely.
call it Kurdistan. So, yeah. So.
All right, John, take it away.
Why don't we launch back into it? Okay. Lest you believe that there's no good news in 2019, today, Roger Stone, a former aide and longtime friend of President Trump, was found guilty of obstructing a congressional investigation into Russia's interference in the 2016 election in what prosecutors said was an effort to protect Mr. Trump. So, look, the trial had been going on for some time. That's the most normal photo of him we were able to find. So the trial had been going on for some time. It had been marked by multiple attempts by Stone to intimidate witnesses, intimidate the judge at times. It was a weird case. But you should know that he was charged with lying to the House Intelligence Committee, trying to block the testimony of another potential witness, and concealing reams of evidence from investigators. Prosecutors claimed he tried to thwart the committee's work because the truth would have, quote, looked terrible for both the president and his campaign. He was found guilty on all 7 counts he was charged with. And we have no idea at this point how much time, if any, he will actually serve, but supposedly he faces up to 50 years.
Oh my God, that would be so nice.
You all have actually interacted with this guy in person,
He
right?
is he's just a bad hombre, okay? As one of his favorite politicians would say. He's horrible, and I'm glad that, look, I think that there was an injustice when it comes to Trump and the clear obstruction of justice that was outlined in the Mueller report. Now, Democrats decided that they were just gonna leave it alone, even though they wasted all of their energy on this investigation. So Trump got away with the obstruction of justice. But there are all these Trump cronies who have had to pay the consequences for their illegal activity. And obstructing justice is a serious crime. And I'm glad that they investigated this, and I'm glad that there were consequences for at least some people surrounding Donald Trump, including Roger Stone. Roger Stone's favorite political figure from history is Richard Nixon. So great, now you get to actually pay consequences for the types of things that you thought Richard Nixon was so great at.
Yeah, it speaks to and legitimizes that if not Trump himself, which we're quite sure is guilty of obstruction of justice, that his senior advisors and his team does obstruct justice, and that there's clear evidence of that. And I think it's really important that that is somehow used in the political campaign in 2020, depending on who goes against Trump.
Just really fast, I know this is like not the take you're supposed to have, because it's like, hey, it's good news, Roger Stone's awful, and he's not gonna face 50 years. Doesn't seem like if he did, that's way too much, right?
No.
50 years?
Yep, that's perfect.
That's a long
It's a perfect
time.
sentence. It's the best sentence, a strong sentence.
Well, white collar criminals very rarely get, as we know, significant sentences that are proportionate to the impact of their crime. In this case, it seems like the crime may not be that violent or impactful, but if you look at it systemically in terms of how it corrodes our country as we know it.
So from our member comments, Logan wrote in and said, I look forward to Stone being given only 5 years in jail because he is a first-time offender. So Logan, I agree with you in that he's likely to get a much shorter sentence. I don't know if it's gonna be 5 years or a little more, a little less than that. That's usually common. I mean, look at what happened with, what's the other guy's name?
Cohen or Manafort?
Yes, Paul Manafort.
Yeah.
Paul Manafort's sentence was incredibly short considering the crimes he had committed. And so, but look, I'm partly joking about the 50 years, right? I don't think 50 years is a reasonable sentence, but he does deserve prison time because anyone else who was caught and convicted of obstructing justice, any average American would face a lengthy sentence.
And this allows me to make the point I most wanted to make, which is we should not just assume that he being sent to prison is the same as other people, especially poor, black, and vulnerable and working people being sent to jail.
Certainly.
He might end up in some penthouse in prison.
That's entirely possible. Now, he might not end up there at all if Donald Trump chooses to pardon him. And we don't have much of a response from Donald Trump yet about what happened, but there were 2 tweets. He tweeted, so they now convict Roger Stone of lying and want to jail him for many years to come. Well, what about crooked Hillary, Comey, Strzok, Page, McCabe, Brendan Clapper, Shifty Schiff, and Nellie, Steele, and all of the others, including even Mueller himself? Didn't they lie? A double standard like never before in the history of our capital C country. So he's just listing his political opponents. Okay, you put together a list in a tweet. I can put together a list of names. What about this list? Roger Stone, Rick Gates, Michael Flynn, Michael Cohen, George Papadopoulos, Paul Manafort. Those are all buddies of yours and they're all in jail. Why do you hang out with so many criminals?
Or have served time in prison because
Exactly. They've all been convicted of felonies at one time or another. Some still serving their sentences, some about to go. And it's amazing that on the same day that this impeachment inquiry is going forward, Roger Stone, one of his former to the extent that a sociopath can have a friend, one of his best friends, is going to be going to prison. We also find out Rudy Giuliani is under multiple investigations of multiple different charges. It's just a band of criminals from top to bottom. That's all it is.
And it is exceptional and it is spectacular and it's insane and heinous, like how this this group of criminals has taken over our presidency. But we also, again, I know this is a much larger point. We have to understand what are the conditions that created this in this country, like how there's other forms of deep-seated corruption, deep-seated institutional injustice that has pervaded this country, the neoliberal aspects of this country that kind of led to this populist, con artist takeover.
Right.
So that's what led to Trump. If you want to know what led to Roger Stone, Joker is still in theaters.
I wanted to read one more member comment. And by the way, members are such an important part of this program because they help to support this show and keep us independent. And so if you'd like to have your comments read through some of our stories, you can join by going to tyt.com/join. Anyway, serial bunglers are people too writes in and says, as a Norwegian, I don't think anyone should spend 50 years in prison. However, if anyone deserves this, it's Roger Stone.
He's like
By the
number
way,
4.
What is it like to live in Norway?
They're bringing Norway. Okay, I think we have time for one more story.
Let's do
We
it.
can fit it in. Okay, we're gonna mix it up a little bit. Enough of Trump. Pete Buttigieg has recently been doing better in the polls, both in some individual states like Iowa and New Hampshire, but also a little bit better overall. In some polls, he's at 6% or 7% or as high as 9%. But he hasn't been going up uniformly across all groups. In certain demographics, including African American voters, he's having a lot of trouble getting above 0 or 1 or 2%. Now, if you've been following TYT's reporting from South Bend, it makes a little bit of sense. But he has heard these criticisms, and when they're brought up to him, he says generally something like this. Our response to those who ask what our agenda for Black America is the Douglas Plan. It is the most comprehensive vision put forward by a 2020 candidate on the question of how we're going to tackle systemic racism in this country. So this is a plan. It's been out for a bit, you can look up the details, but there are some issues with the way they've promoted it. And Ryan Grimm did a great job in a write-up for The Intercept, breaking down a few of the major issues with this effort by Buttigieg. So to build support for the plan, Buttigieg and his staff lobbied prominent Black South Carolinians to endorse it in order to strengthen the cause of racial justice. The Buttigieg campaign began promoting a list of 400 South Carolinian supporters of his Douglas Plan in emails to reporters and posts on social media. So let's start from the top of that list. At the top of the press release were 3 prominent supporters of the plan. It's Tamika Devine, Ivory Thigpen, and Johnny Cordero, chair of the state party's Black Caucus. But there are issues with each one of those names appearing on this. Tamika Devine, who has not endorsed a candidate yet in the presidential election, told The Intercept that she did not intend her support for the plan to be read as an endorsement for Buttigieg's candidacy and believes the campaign was intentionally vague about the way it was presented. Asked if she knew of any Black supporters for the plan who were also supporters of Buttigieg, she said she wasn't sure.
Jeez.
The next person listed at the top, Ivory Thigpen, said, even though I had conversations with the campaign, it was clear to me, or at least I thought I made it clear to them, that I was a strong Bernie Sanders supporter, actually co-chair of the state, and I was not seeking to endorse their candidate or their plan.
Wow.
And yet her name ended up there.
Yep.
The third, Johnny Cordero, is no longer listed publicly as a supporter. When The Intercept reached out for comment, he explained that he had never endorsed the plan, nor has he endorsed Buttigieg. And he had a particularly incendiary comment saying, it's presumptuous to think you can come up with a plan for Black America without hearing from Black folk. There's nothing in there that said Black folk had anything to do with the drafting of that plan. Now, I like Pete, please don't get me wrong. I'll help him in any way I can. I think he's an honest man. I think he's a decent man. I think he has integrity. I'd like to see him keep running, but you don't do that. Those days are over and done with. We're tired of people telling us what we need. You wanna find out what we need? Come and ask us.
Wow.
Whoa, we did that in sync.
I know, because this story is just so out of control.
Yeah.
I mean,
great job by Ryan Grimm on this.
Ryan Grimm is such an excellent reporter. Look, how do you call him an honest man though when he, first of all, used Black lawmakers from the South as endorsements when they haven't endorsed Buttigieg at all? And look, this is a common thing that I see with politicians, and I see it a lot on the right when it comes to veterans and various groups of people. People are not props. You can't use people as props. I mean, in the past, it's happened a lot, and it's actually been a strategy that's worked. But I think we're in a completely different age now, where people are hyper aware of what's going on. I think a lot of voters are paying close attention to the words coming out of politicians' mouths and the actual actions they put forth in their campaigns. And so to just put out there that these individuals have supported you, have endorsed you, is unacceptable, and he's using people as props. It's not okay.
At the minimum, it's disingenuous. At the worst, it's deliberately misleading and lying. And I do want to make the point that I think in this cycle with this primary, we're going to find out whether a rhetorical expert like Pete Buttigieg, who basically does what a lot of typical centrist neoliberal politicians do, which is try to pretend like he supports everything that everybody wants that could possibly vote for him. I mean, as we saw with Medicare for all, and then Medicare for those who want it, or something like that, he called it, right?
Yeah.
So it's very consistent with what I've seen out of Pete Buttigieg's campaign, which is an attempt to claim all spaces and try to be sort of appealing and acceptable to everybody, and actually feign support from all these different constituencies.
Yeah, definitely. And I want to note that Ramesh is a Bernie Sanders surrogate.
I should say that.
So we want to make it abundantly clear to the audience, just to maintain the integrity of the show.
Well, we should probably reference that both of us have endorsed Bernie Sanders at this point.
Yes,
yeah,
on
you
this
did too.
show.
Awesome.
So-
That's great. So that's why I think that there's this distinction between and voters are going to choose. Are you going to choose? Are you going to? And I'm saying this with my biases. Are you going to support someone who not only says the right things but actually has shown that in practice, or are you going to support someone who is slippery with their language and their claims of what they support and who they support?
And look, to be as fair as possible, it's unlikely that in this first instance of sort of deception that he was directly involved. He didn't put together the press release himself, I'm sure, but his campaign did. So let's be clear about that. The issue is, and I'll go fast through this, this is just the first of 4 different really questionable decisions in this promotion plan. So the first was involving these 3 very well-respected leaders as supposedly having been endorsers of the plan when they apparently weren't. But there are 3 other issues. One is that after publication, the Buttigieg campaign said that it had sent the plan to the list of supporters and asked them to opt out if they did not want their name included on the list. So many people found themselves on this list just because they got an email that they didn't even see, and opting out or else you're an endorser, that's a crazy strategy.
You don't opt out in the digital world. You are always, you are as a default opted in, and it's extremely difficult to opt out.
Yeah.
And we all have mysterious emails that all 3 of us get every day, and we don't even know how they come, and we just sort of ignore them.
Exactly,
we don't opt out.
Exactly. That's obviously dishonest. That's number 2. Number 3 is the list of 400 supporters in South Carolina. Look, to be fair, in some cases they're just referenced as 400 supporters from South Carolina. In others, it is strongly hinted that it's 400 African American supporters of the plan. Which makes sense considering what they're trying to do with the plan and the promotion. The issue is that Ryan Grimm did an analysis of the people on the list, and to the best of his ability, he found that 42% of the entire list is white, not African American.
Oh boy.
So that's number 3. Number 4 is, I guess, the most petty, and Pete Buttigieg definitely was involved in this, but come on, man. Look at this tweet. On top of everything else, the Buttigieg campaign used a stock photo from Kenya to promote its Frederick Douglass plan for Black America.
That's incredible.
So it's just a Shutterstock image, and he obviously didn't choose it.
Yeah.
But from top to bottom, this promotional effort is, best case scenario, the most tone deaf thing in politics.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that if you're genuinely wanting to reach out to various communities, that is part of your platform, that's part of your campaign. The best way to do it is have representation of those communities within your campaign. So look, I don't know what the makeup of his campaign is, and I can't really comment on those specifics, but I will say, if he's genuinely wanting to reach out to various communities, have that representation as part of your campaign, have them working in your campaign so you don't promote things or you don't craft policy or plans based on your worldview,
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
Because
That's
we
right.
all have different life experiences and it's difficult to understand, really understand the worldview of others when you haven't walked in their shoes.
No, the best possible way to go is, instead of trying to appropriate and maybe intentionally or not objectify those who you want to get support from, instead you actually say, hey, you and your communities, you lead my campaign.
Yeah.
You be part of the leadership. You direct things. It's you that's in charge. You, a human being from this community, rather than I claiming you.
Yeah. And finally, really fast, I want to play a very quick game of Can You Imagine? So maybe I'm wrong, and maybe you will tune into MSNBC tonight and CNN, and you will see this all over the place, but I kind of doubt it. It was on The Intercept because Ryan Grimm did a great job, and we're covering it. But can you imagine if Bernie Sanders had done one of these 4 things?
Oh yeah, that would have been it. But he won't. And because if you actually look at the makeup, again, biased, I'm a surrogate for the campaign. If you look at the makeup of senior leadership in this campaign for 2020 for Bernie Sanders, it's very different than 2016. We're talking about people of color, Latinx leaders, Brianna Joy Gray, right, like as press secretary, Faz Shakir, the first Muslim campaign manager in the history of this country. We're talking about young people of color, people from community positions of leadership, and that's really a large part of why I support this campaign.
Yeah.
All right, real quick, I do want to read some of what our members are saying about this story. Members help to keep this show independent, so you can join by going to tyt.com/join. So. Where is the Buttigieg one? My Gay Marriage writes in and says, I like Buttigieg in the same way someone might have a crush on their local cute Starbucks barista. I might give him some flirty side eye, but I'm already taken by a real man, Bernie Sanders.
Boom.
Get it. And then a guy writes in, nothing sums up Buttigieg's campaign better than him using a plan named for someone else and taking credit for other people's work.
That is beautifully put.
Yes.
That is, yeah.
All right, thank you to our members. And again, you can join by going to tyt.com/join. All right, Ramesh,
thank you all for having me.
Thank you.
Nice to see you, man.
John Iadarola, thank you. This was a wonderful panel. When we come back for hour 2, we'll have a whole new panel with Mark Thompson and Michael Brooks. Stay tuned.
I'm old enough that I remember when Captain Crunch put the berries in there.
Yay, crunch berries!
And I was like, ooh, the fake berries.
Remember?
We're gonna try that.
We did a story back in the day about how a woman sued, I don't know, General Mills.
She'd been eating it for 4 years, believing that it was actual berries. Yeah. She's like, these aren't real berries at all. I'm like, I got news for you. Captain Crunch isn't really a captain or a person. Joining me now, legendary whistleblower and American hero, Edward Snowden. First question is, hey, where are you?
I'm in my apartment in Moscow.
All of a sudden, in the studio, Jim Gaffigan, everybody.
Mental illness is, completely undiagnosed in our society.
It's not about a particular administration. It's about a broken system of power, and through that, really, the instrumentalization of a system of not justice, but injustice.
People understand whether they claim to deny climate change or not. Our collective house is in crisis. We're also dealing with the legacy of 40 years of economic policies that have made people's lives more precarious.
Sometimes you got to force people into their humanity. Sometimes you have to shake people into empathy.
Senator Elizabeth Warren joins us in the studio.
Healthcare is a basic human right, and we are fighting for basic human rights.
In order to actually achieve that vision of everyone having access to the same resources and getting to determine the outcome of their life, we have a lot of work to do, and it needs to start right now.
Here's something you may not know. When you deposit your money in a big bank, it doesn't just sit, safe and secure, in a vault. Instead, your money could end up building oil pipelines, mining for coal, or drilling in the Arctic. So if you're concerned about the planet, give your money something good to do. Make the move to green with Aspiration's fossil fuel-free account and join the thousands each week who are switching to save their dollars and save the planet at the same time.
The Monsanto Corporation continues to sell a herbicide called Roundup, but you should know that that herbicide is a potential killer. Recent studies have linked Roundup to significant increases in non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. That's a cancer that can be devastating to you and the people you love. While Roundup continues to cause cancer, Monsanto continues to make huge profits from the sale of Roundup. They will not take it off the market. If you or a loved one are exposed to Roundup at work or home and then developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, you may be entitled to financial compensation, and it's important for you to take action now and hold Monsanto accountable.
Cenk Uygur joins us.
We are progressive and unapologetically so. Very happy to say that millennial and Gen Z generations are massively progressive along with us.
Democrats, they've been so weak for so long. For God's sake, fight for your side. I would not like to compromise with Republicans. I would like to defeat them. Lynn, do you support Donald Trump?
Yes, I like Donald Trump.
Well, that's why we think you're racist. The 5 black kids in Central Park did not commit the rape. He said, who cares? Keep them in prison anyway. They probably did something. He's a terrible guy. Very fine people on the side chanting, Jews will not replace us. He says we should ban all Muslims. Well, that's bigotry by definition. He said it during the campaign trail over and over again. Called Latinos criminals and rapists. See, you're used to Republicans being strong on television and Democrats cowering. New day in America. Progressives, we actually fight back.
Hey guys, welcome back to TYT. Anna Kasparian with you, and we have a whole new panel, okay? Michael Brooks, he's on the main show. Okay, fine, Brett, fine, we're gonna drop it. Go ahead, let's drop it. Michael Brooks, host of The Michael Brooks Show. Check that out, it's an awesome show. And Mark Thompson, host of The Edge with Mark Thompson, a wonderful podcast. Make sure you check that out as well.
Thank you, Anna. Anna was insistent she wasn't gonna drop it again, and then finally.
She saw this pleading look on my face. I was like, really?
Are you the reason, Michael?
Really? I don't get a drop? Really?
It was actually Brett in my ear, who usually, he doesn't speak in my ear often. But when he does, he means it. He's like, drop it, drop it.
Thanks,
I'm like,
Brett.
okay, fine.
Thanks, Brett. It means a lot.
It was dropped.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna have such a great hour ahead for you, but I do want to read one quick member comment from Progressive Todd, who's apparently familiar with you, Michael, because he says, "I love Michael Brooks."
I love you back, Todd.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you.
So we're gonna talk about a lot of progressive issues today. The transition plan for Medicare for All. Warren put that out today. Later in the show, we're gonna talk about MSNBC's coverage or lack of coverage of Bernie Sanders. But I gotta be honest, my favorite story in this rundown today is Dave Rubin related. Because AOC, she can't do anything wrong after what she did on Twitter yesterday. So
yeah, I will cut her a lot more slack. Anytime I come with some ridiculous over foreign policy quibble, forget it.
Forget it.
She nailed it. It's all good.
All right. Well, before we get to the stories, though, I actually have something for you, Mark. So as you probably know, LA has been dealing with pretty intense wildfires, and your neighborhood was affected, Mark. And you lost something that meant something to you. Luckily, your home wasn't destroyed, but a lot of homes on your block were. But you did lose one possession that you care a lot about.
It's true.
And it's your TYT hat.
Now, as you were leading up to it, I realized what you was talking about. It's true.
Yes.
Normally I wear my TYT hat, but I just have a black hat on.
So we want to present you with a brand new TYT hat. We love you, and we're so sorry about what your neighborhood had to go through. But we need to do something about climate change.
This is true. It was. Oh, that's so sweet. It's a rough way to get some TYT merch, but I'm very happy to get it. And all kidding aside, it's been a brutal time. I was just up there again today, and it's a neighborhood rebuilding. It's kind of scary. But
it's devastating.
Thank you. All right.
All right. Well, with that said, let's talk about one other thing we desperately need in this country: Medicare for All. And Warren has put out how she plans to transition to Medicare for All, and we'll discuss whether we're into it. So, as promised, Elizabeth Warren has released her transition plan for Medicare for All. This follows after she had published her finance plan, which had some issues, which we discussed on No Filter. And so let's talk a little bit about what this transition would look like if Elizabeth Warren were to get elected. So she writes on her website, elizabethwarren.com, "My plan will be implemented in my first term. It includes dramatic actions to lower drug prices, a Medicare for All option available to everyone that is more generous than any plan proposed by any other presidential candidate, critical health system reforms to save money and save lives, and a full transition to Medicare for All." So the wording there already is a little unclear, but she gets more specific as the post goes on. She writes, "I'll reverse Donald Trump's sabotage of healthcare, protect individuals with pre-existing conditions, take on big pharmaceutical companies to lower costs of key drugs for millions of Americans, and improve the Affordable Care Act, Medicare, and Medicaid." Now, as we all know, Medicare for All is nothing like the Affordable Care Act. The Affordable Care Act included a mandate that forced Americans to buy into private insurance. Medicare for All is a single payer healthcare system where the healthcare or the insurance or the payments, I should say, to healthcare providers, to doctors, is done by the government, right? So let me give you more details. According to NBC News and their analysis of this, the first effort, which would be accomplished through a budget reconciliation process that requires only 50 votes in the Senate and isn't subject to filibuster rules, would establish a true Medicare for All public option. Public option is the key phrase here that you need to focus on. And then you go back to her website and the wording that she used: "I'll give every American over the age of 50 the choice to enter an improved Medicare program. And I'll give every person in America the choice to get coverage through a true Medicare for All option." And then I know I'm taking a long time to explain this, but I want to make sure you know all the facts before we open it up to the panel. She continues to write, "Coverage under the new Medicare for All option, again, option, will be immediately free for children under the age of 18 and for families making at or below 200% of the federal poverty level. For all others, the cost will be modest and eventually coverage under this plan will be free for everyone." And then this is the part that's important. "No later than my third year in office," typically when re-election campaigns really ramp up, I will fight to pass legislation that would complete the transition to full Medicare for all. By this point, the American people will have experienced the full benefits of a true Medicare for all option, and they can see for themselves how that experience stacks up against high-priced care that requires them to fight tooth and nail against their insurance company. All right, with that said, let's open this up to the panel. What do you guys make of this?
I think this is so embarrassing, is really the only word that I could think of. And before we get to the policy merits, which are obviously suspect because she's sort of doing a mashup of Buttigieg and Bernie and generating the worst of both worlds. The reality is, and this goes to the core problem with her campaign. She does not have a power analysis of this country. She has understanding that there's corruption in certain sectors, but she does not have a systems approach. And just the idea that you are going to have two massive healthcare battles where you have to assemble millions of people to take on the most powerful interests in this country, and you're gonna do it twice, and then people are gonna realize the benefit of this new option in 2 years. I mean, it's absurd. It's honestly, and I find people who have pushed back on her behalf so consistently, they can't just keep with a sort of modest set of like, yes, she's got some really good ideas in certain areas, she has certain expertise in finance and so on. She does not have a big picture progressive vision, and certainly not a strategy to implement it. It's time to stop playing around.
That's certainly true. I mean, in a sense, that insurance company grab that was Obamacare, that's represented here. I like your thought about it being a mashup. I had the same thought. It's sort of like serving so many masters, and you're wondering, is that a concession legislatively, meaning you think you won't be able to get anything passed unless you sort of serve those many masters? Are you trying to sort of pre-compromise the way we saw Obama pre-compromise bills in the early years, first 2 years of his first term? There's a lot going on here, and there isn't a coherence to it, it doesn't seem. It's striking in how little coherence there is.
Well, the thing that I don't really understand is how out of all of the plans she's posted about on her website, this is the one that she's like latched onto and tried to kind of take on as her own. And she uses language like, in the very first graphic that I read to you, she says things like, more generous than any plan proposed by any other presidential candidate. No, that is not true, because under what Bernie Sanders would do with his plan, there is no talk of, all right, first, I'm gonna waste all of my political capital on a public option. And then in my third year, when I'm running for re-election and I have less political capital, that's when I'm going to maybe start my fight for a Medicare for all system. I mean, come on.
It's fantasy. I mean, it's like, honestly, I mean, this is why I'm reacting to it so strongly. It's like I hear the West Wing music playing in the background. This does not work in reality. It will also, and Carl Beher made this point, divide the Medicare for all movement out of the gate. Instead of assembling millions of people, there'll be a familiar argument about whether or not we go with the half loaf or all of the loaf. And another thing I want to point out, there was a huge pushback when people like you and I said, when she did her first blog post a couple of weeks ago, we talked about the head tax, which is regressive. And then we said the timeline doesn't seem clear. And then some people with a lot of institutional credibility came out and said, no, absolutely, she's on the right timeline. And we acquiesced. We said, okay, apparently. And now we're coming out with, it's still the same timeline, but it's two pieces of legislation that rely on an in-depth political fantasy universe to implement. So, because it's not just, I'm gonna push for a second piece of legislation in an election year, essentially. It's, my poll numbers are good, everything is working. I mean, the level of political contingency that she's relying on, no serious person could take this seriously.
Well, this is a political press release beyond that, Michael. Right. I mean, clearly when you see the verbiage in that press release, my plan will provide in ways that blah, blah, blah. That's not written by a policy person, that's written by a political person. Right. That's what's going on here.
Yeah, and I think that she does have some ideas that she's strong on. Now, I've been clear, I've endorsed Bernie Sanders on this show, so you know where my preferences lie, and I think that's important to note. Michael, you're also a Bernie Sanders supporter. I don't know. Yeah, very strong Bernie Sanders supporter. So I want to be clear about
Absolutely.
that. Mark, I don't know if you've endorsed anyone, but I'm putting that out there so the audience knows where we're coming from. But look, I trust politicians like Representative Pramila Jayapal. I really do. I think that she is a good progressive. She has written her own version of Medicare for All. So when Michael brings up us acquiescing when someone has stood up for Warren, I mean, I'm thinking about Representative Jayapal because she actually shared one of my tweets where I was critical of Warren's lack of clarity in the timeline of the transition plan, right? And she's like, nope, definitely. She's in favor of a 4-year transition plan. This is not a 4-year transition plan. Saying that you intend to begin the fight for Medicare for All in your 3rd year of your first term is not, I mean, look, even if her numbers are good, and even if she has backing in Congress and all that, which she won't, let's keep it real. There's still gonna be a number of Republicans, but more importantly, establishment Democrats pushing back against this. The reality is getting what you want done within a year is impossible. Something as big as Medicare for All is impossible to get done in that short period of time.
And yeah, I mean, the reason I'm just so irritated is because this whole brand has been built on this notion that there is a plan for everything. And look, Elizabeth Warren is brilliant. She's got some really good ideas, but a lot of people can sit in rooms and generate good ideas. Almost no one can develop a coherent strategy as to how to implement those ideas and then have the credibility to build a context and a momentum towards building them. And that is like just objectively Bernie Sanders, whether you like it or not. And at this point, this is not only, first of all, they're competing against each other, so obviously that's important, but this type of maneuver muddies the waters, and I think actually enforces people like Buttigieg who want to undermine the whole thing.
It deliberately muddies the water, I would suggest. I think this is a political calculus that goes into this particular plan.
Yeah. All right. Well,
not good.
Bad. Very bad.
Very bad for you.
All right, so by the way, check out Michael's show. He has a segment called Bad. And it's great. All right, so we're gonna take a quick break. When we come back, we're gonna discuss how voters feel about the various Democratic candidates and the policies they're proposing. Who do they like the most? And this includes Republican voters, by the way. And we'll also discuss MSNBC's coverage of Bernie Sanders. Is it fair? How are they covering him? A great piece of reporting by In These Times. So we'll share that with you and more when we return.
Now baby, move that fat, baby, move that fat. We thugged out.
What's J&A?
Ja'Cory and Arthur.
You guys share a mug?
Yeah, you both take our hot cocoa black.
That doesn't make any sense.
Plus, I'm right-handed and Arthur's left-handed, so our lips wouldn't even touch the same area. It's perfect.
No, I'm not left-handed.
What do you mean? I've seen you type with your left hand.
Yeah, and also with my right hand. That's how typing works.
So this is what democracy looks like.
When I think back to the debates in 2016, this was a very different party that was debating.
First time in my lifetime that I've actually had progressives represent us.
Bernie Sanders has changed the arithmetic.
This whole debate tonight was shaped by progressives.
We have to live our values every day in a campaign.
She came with receipts. That was her strongest moment by far.
This is going to be one of the best primaries we've ever seen.
This is what we've been saying would happen, and now it's playing out on the debate stage.
The Monsanto Corporation continues to sell a herbicide called Roundup, but you should know that that herbicide is a potential killer. Recent studies have linked Roundup to significant increases in non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. That's a cancer that can be devastating to you and the people you love. While Roundup continues to cause cancer, Monsanto continues to make huge profits from the sale of Roundup. They will not take it off the market. If you or a loved one are exposed to Roundup at work or home and then developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, you may be entitled to financial compensation, and it's important for you to take action now and hold Monsanto accountable.
We are onto something that is going to be amazing. But what we need is your help.
The number one problem is there's too much power in too few hands.
Every single problem that we have can be traced back to dark money.
They take large donors, they serve large donors.
So these handful of gatekeepers try to dictate everything.
Like all of you already know, they don't work for you, they work for their donors. So fire them and hire people who will only work for you that say no corporate back money.
We are going to change the way we elect candidates in this country.
Uncorrupted Democrats, we're gonna fight for the issues and win on policy.
This is incredibly personal. We need free healthcare for everyone.
We're fighting for $15 minimum wage, single payer healthcare, debt-free college, and we are gonna get money out of politics once and for all.
I've taken a public pledge not to accept any corporate money.
Because the last thing we're gonna do is go into another presidential election and run a corporatist against a populist candidate.
At some point, the buck needs to stop, and it's gonna stop with us. It's gonna stop with Justice Democrats.
So who are we?
People who do not take corporate PAC money.
We're relying on small donors.
99.9% of our contributions came from people.
You're a Justice Democrat, so you don't take any corporate PAC money.
I'm not influenced by money.
As a Justice Democrat, I made that pledge.
Not a betting. Absolutely no.
I will go to Congress unbossed and unbought.
We try to create a government which works for all of us.
That is what America's about, and that's what a representative democracy should be about.
We are just getting warmed up here.
Vote for uncorrupted Democrats. The fight starts now, it starts today, and it starts with you.
I've been honest with him. Like, yeah, I was upset with you and I shouldn't have done it. But instead I was like, I'm just trying to protect my engagement ring. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to TYT. Second hour, Michael Brooks and Mark Thompson join me. So I want to read a few TYT lives on Twitter. I know that I haven't been doing so on today's show, but Kara Curley writes in and says, I don't have to hear it. I hear it in my mind. Brett saying, drop it, drop it, drop it. I started typing it before Anna said anything, by the way. All right, so I'm gonna keep it real. I was thinking about phasing that out maybe for hour 2, but I guess I can't.
Blasphemy.
I guess you guys like it.
You gotta trust your instincts, Anna.
It's just so cheesy. Okay. Keeping it real.
It's cheesy cool though.
It's gonna get phased out,
yeah,
guys.
real
Just
cool.
be prepared.
No, I listen to the audience. If you guys love the drop it thing, then I'm gonna keep it. Okay, I'm gonna drop it.
She's gonna phase it out in 1 year, and then in 3 years,
that's
she'll
right.
get rid of all of it. Yeah.
I'll bring it back. Then I'm gonna fight for it. Okay.
Then she's gonna fight for it to come back in the 4th year.
All right, I bathe in a very stable genius's tears. Member comments, by the way, writes it and says, I love how Anna's incorporating comments into the stories instead of waiting until after the break. To me, it's adding a freshness to the broadcast not seen in corporate media. Well, I mean, look, you guys help to keep us honest, you help to keep us independent. And so I want you to be part of the show. So as often as I can, I do want to read member comments during the actual content of the topics we're discussing, so. All right, so with that said, let's move on to Bernie Sanders because there is some pretty awesome polling today by Reuters and Ipsos. So, new polling by Reuters and Ipsos indicates that the electorate seems to really love the policy proposals coming from Bernie Sanders. Now, I want to be clear that in this poll, Reuters made sure to include all voters, including Republicans and Democrats, which makes it makes the results surprising for some, but it's certainly not surprising for people who have been paying attention to the frustrations of Americans overall. Economic populism certainly resonates with people of all political ideologies because we're all in the same boat together. We're dealing with the same frustrations, the same difficulties in providing for our families. So I love seeing this in the polling. So when it comes to healthcare, the top candidate is Bernie Sanders. 25% prefer Bernie Sanders policy, which is a true Medicare for all policy. Coming in second is Biden at 17%, which I don't even really understand what his policy is other than his vague statements about improving the Affordable Care Act.
That's a halo of name recognition is what that is.
Yeah.
Listening to records. Oh wait, I'm sorry, that was my bad.
Coming in at number 3, we have Elizabeth Warren at 14%, who has a Medicare option plan, which is clear in what she proposed today. And then you have Buttigieg at 5%, Harris at 4%, Booker at 2%. When it comes to the environment, Sanders is the one who has taken the Green New Deal and has turned it into an actual policy. And he's polling at 22% on that, Biden at 15%, Warren at 11%, and you can see the rest. When it comes to strong progressive, the person who comes in at number 1, unsurprisingly, is Bernie Sanders at 23%, Warren at 17%, Biden at 12%, Buttigieg, Harris at 5%. Economy and jobs, again, we have Sanders pretty high up there, but Biden is at 21%, which is surprising. But Sanders is close at 20, Warren at 12, Buttigieg at 5, Harris at 4, Booker at 2. And then when it comes to immigration, Sanders is the top pick here, 19%, and with Biden at 15, Warren at 9, Harris at 7, Buttigieg at 5. And then finally, this is something that kind of concerns me a little bit. So when it comes to unifying the Democratic Party, Biden comes in first at 25%, Sanders at 14%. I just find that fascinating because there's a lot of antagonistic language by people like Biden when it comes to the progressive movement. How does that help to unify the party? I mean, when you think about his statements toward millennials, he's recently said in an interview, all these millennials, all these young people complaining about how tough they have it. Give me a break. That was his response to them. How does that unify people?
That's because you're really evaluating what he says. These polls don't actually reflect that. No one has the sort of granular knowledge of what Biden said that you do, Anna, or that we who follow this a little bit more do. I think that that's why I said it's sort of the halo effect of Biden. I know him, Democrat. In a way, to be fair, Bernie's not a Democrat per se. He's running as a Democrat. But you see my point. I mean, if you want to do the political calculation that way, you could. I think much of that positive stuff that we see related to Biden is all just name recognition repackaged in some way.
I think that's totally true. And I think that I've always thought that, he's the candidate with the biggest disconnect between progressive media, non-incumbent media, which we'll get to in a second, but people who care about these issues and know about these issues. We're not gonna like Joe Biden. Normal Democratic Party voters, I think there's a lot of fondness for him. But I think there are some of those numbers can get dislodged with it's not just that he said that, it's that he worked his ass off to personally not give us a break when he made that bankruptcy bill get passed.
Right, of course.
And so I actually think that in his case, there's a couple of pretty silver bullet choice policy areas that are pretty easy to explain that if the right person delivers it, could undermine them a lot.
So, okay, let's talk about that a little bit, because while I absolutely love the policy proposals coming from someone like Bernie Sanders, I think he has the best policies, bar none. One of my concerns is that he's just genuinely a nice guy, right? Like when it comes to campaigning, he doesn't hit back. And he does sometimes on the campaign stage, or on the debate stage, I should say, but he does have the ability to single-handedly dismantle Biden by bringing up the bankruptcy bill. He has brought up the crime bill before on the debate stage, which I think was helpful. But am I right, or am I being fair in assessing his lack of hitting back hard enough?
I think it's mixed, because on one hand, I think you're totally right, and I would have liked them to be much more aggressive with Warren, frankly, outside of the gate, and just being really clear. On the other hand, the refs are worked so hard against Bernie that we all know if he goes out on stage and he's like, well, I respect Elizabeth, but we have a little bit of a disagreement, they'll be like, oh my God, Bernie is super monster, right? So I think you have to have they're playing on multiple fronts. They have massive hostility from media, from the establishment, from the oligarchy. There's a double standard on everything. And then, I think he has his own instincts, which I wish were a little more aggressive.
Yeah.
He's certainly capable of being aggressive, and he's the most authentic candidate without question. He's even more authentic than Donald Trump, whose authenticity, I think, even though he was he's a crazy man, something about that authenticity resonated with some part of the electorate. But anyway, Bernie is the real thing. He's strategic, and I kind of like that. I know we get frustrated because Bernie, But I think that his strategy is to wait and to only shoot when there's an open shot, when it's a time to maximize an open shot.
That's fair. That's fair. And look, I think that whatever strategy he's using, it's clearly working for him. He continues to be a front runner. I believe he's still leading in New Hampshire. So that's great. And look, if the electorate, including Republican voters, see him as the candidate with the absolute best policies, he's doing something right. But I think that he has to fight back against some of the repetitive talking points that we're seeing on cable news. For instance, one of the other results from this poll have to do with whether Bernie is the best candidate to beat Donald Trump. And what we hear from the Biden campaign on cable news, especially on MSNBC, over and over again, is that he's the only one out of all the candidates who can beat Trump.
Yeah, a guy who's like literally falling apart.
Yeah.
Has every type of issue that Trump could muddle imaginable and can barely handle himself for 3 hours on a debate stage. Yeah, totally.
But you know,
totally the guy.
You know the truth because you're paying close attention.
Right.
But that repetition in the media is having an impact. It's reflected in this poll. So when it comes to who is most likely to beat Trump in the general election, Biden is first, by a pretty wide margin, 32%. Sanders is second at 16.
Yeah, that's a problem. That number's a problem, and I think. I think the best things they did with this was like in the beginning when they sent that letter to Center for American Progress and they said, or the CAP blog, and they said like, look, this is trash, and you're like on notice. When he talked about Bezos, what's interesting is I think there's a distinction in the Sanders campaign because it is a it is a leading campaign, and it's filled with people that are very sincere about this stuff. And so they don't want to just sort of burn everything down, nor should they. At the same time, some of the moves they need to make look like that. When they just have to say categorically, like, we don't get like cable news biased against us. It is what it is. You have to go to us. You have to find alternative channels for us because we are never going to get a fair shake. And by the way, that's a good thing, right? That reflects well on us.
By the way, that's a really great point, Michael, and I hadn't thought of it because you always hear it from the right that the mainstream media, they always spin it against us, and all you hear is the right crying. Even though Fox News Channel is the #1 cable network, and I mean, and most of the commentators on talk radio, which drives a lot of the vote, they're all right wingers. So really, the right controls a lot of the media, but all you hear is them belly aching about how the mainstream media is
and
left.
The mainstream is center right. Like the editor of Politico just wrote a piece actually acknowledging that of all people. So the configuration of like moderate or liberal media is also totally antithetical to Bernie because they're quite right wing on economics.
And so we should hear that. We should hear that we're being orphaned. The progressives and the left-leaning political parties are being orphaned by the mainstream media. And I think it will have the same effect that the right got, which is eventually they start to bend over backwards to accommodate you. I mean, that's the hope, or at least give you a little more airplay. It's a shame because you do have to get into the mainstream. Last thing, Anna.
Yeah.
Because you do need to get into the mainstream media because a lot of people don't discover the other information sources in this country.
Yeah, it's devastating, and we're gonna get to how the mainstream media has been covering Bernie in just a minute. But before we do, I wanted to read a member comment from Marius, who says, if Biden becomes the nominee, the under 40 voter turnout will be the biggest OK Boomer moment.
I mean, this guy is,
that's right.
He's not gonna mobilize anybody. I mean, that's the other thing that's interesting, like that comment from T.I. on The View a couple weeks ago. It's interesting where he just was like, well, it was like, I'm looking at Bernie because I think he has the movement to take on Trump. It's interesting that I think you're right on some level that you need, in order to like know what's happening with Biden or whatever, there's granular detail. But I actually think there's a lot of people who are just like savvy and have an intuition about things, and Bernie's gonna appeal to them as well.
Well, we're gonna take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll get into some analysis on how MSNBC has covered Bernie, and then we'll wrap the show with my favorite story, and it's AOC dunking on Dave Rubin. Come right back.
Hi, I'm Bartholomew Joseph Kyle. I do audio for the main show, The Young Turks. I also do audio for Post Game. I started in 2006. I met Cenk Uygur at the Iraq for Sale screening that was directed by Robert Greenwald. And watching that, I want to figure out a way to be part of something that's genuine and authentic.
The Monsanto Corporation continues to sell a herbicide called Roundup, but you should know that that herbicide is a potential killer. Recent studies have linked Roundup to significant increases in non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. That's a cancer that can be devastating to you and the people you love. While Roundup continues to cause cancer, Monsanto continues to make huge profits from the sale of Roundup. They will not take it off the market. If you or a loved one are exposed to Roundup at work or home and then developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, you may be entitled to financial compensation, and it's important for you to take action now and hold Monsanto accountable.
I'll predict right here for you, Chris. I think Donald Trump will leave office before his term is up. He'll be humiliated, embarrassed, and I know him. He's not going to want to lose, and he's going to run for the hills.
You got that bet all day long.
Okay, let's get after it. Now, so look, Cenk has made some good predictions, and this isn't good fun. I could not disagree more.
There's a little bromance between the two of them. You got that bet all day long, Janky, you. Oh, you stop. In the meantime, let's call him out on the damage.
But I just got a Roku set. Did basically a little bit of channel surfing, and I was like, there we are.
Yeah.
There we are. And then I turned it on, and it was John and Brett on Damage Report making fun of me.
Oh no.
So you are so busted. I even took a picture of it, okay? They're talking about my predictions. I got a new prediction for you, John Iadarola.
You're doing a show that's blowing the doors off everybody.
Young Turks is the largest online news network, not a big deal. We're gonna rock the boat. We're gonna be counter-establishment. We're gonna tell people the truth to the best of our abilities. We're so sick of this corruption. We're not the robots on TV. I actually care about the news. Guilty, I care. Fourth day on Occupy Wall Street. Last night we launched Wolfpack. It's us pushing our ideas out there, trying to help the country in every way that we can, trying to make this place just a little bit better. Reporting from the Hillary-Bernie debate, I gotta be honest, you know what we do, we cover it for real. For us, this system isn't working. Free and fair elections.
And when he told the cops that day, when they came to drag her away, and he said, if you're gonna chain her, you're gonna chain me. If you're gonna arrest her, you're gonna arrest me.
All right, welcome back to the Young Turks. I want to get right to the next story so we have enough time to cover my favorite story of the day. With that said, we know that the mainstream media has not done much favorable coverage into Bernie Sanders' campaign. And one of the cable news networks that has been almost openly hostile to him is MSNBC. So recently, In These Times did an analysis into the coverage of Bernie Sanders, his campaign, his policies, to see how often they cover him, and when they do cover him, how often is it favorable coverage versus negative coverage? And here's what we know. In These Times analyzed the network's August and September coverage of the Democratic presidential contest leading candidates, and that includes Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden, and Elizabeth Warren. They write, we focused on the network's flagship primetime shows, The 11th Hour with Brian Williams, All In with Chris Hayes, The Beat with Ari Melber, Hardball with Chris Matthews, The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, and The Rachel Maddow Show. Over the 2 months, these 6 programs focused on Biden, often to the exclusion of Warren and Sanders. Sanders received not only the least total coverage, less than 1/3 of Biden's, but the most negative. As to the substance, MSNBC's reporting revolved around poll results and so-called electability. And so it is not uncommon to watch the election analysis on MSNBC and see a panel where they discuss the electability of Biden versus someone like Bernie Sanders. And this whole idea of you might not be excited by Biden's proposals, but you need to vote for him because he's got the best shot to beat Trump. I mean, it's more of what we got during the 2016 campaign when, unfortunately, the Democratic candidate, Hillary Clinton, didn't give us something to vote for. She tried to give us something to vote against, and that was Donald Trump. That strategy didn't work. Now, I want to quickly go to this graphic that shows you, these little pie charts. And if you look at these pie charts, it breaks it down by show. At the very top, you have the 11th hour with Brian Williams. And that show actually provided the most negative coverage of Bernie Sanders. So you see the three candidates up there at the top. The very third candidate is Bernie Sanders. And the black portion of the pie chart indicates the negative coverage. The green portion is the positive coverage. And at the very end, you see Rachel Maddow. She's the only person who mostly had, if she talks about Bernie Sanders, it's positive coverage. So that's good news, but things are not looking good for a lot of those hosts, including Chris Matthews, Brian Williams. Not good, bad.
Not good, very bad for you. I just want to quote really briefly. He talks in the article in the Indies Times piece. He talks Walter Lippmann. Argued in 1922 that the common interests very largely elude public opinion entirely and they can only be managed by a specialized class. And I think that it goes back to the ideological component we talked about before. This is a center-right network and Bernie Sanders represents on a policy set and even just his life story. He didn't go to Ivy League colleges. He's not a careerist. He's like a very successful politician who dropped out. And I think on every single level, in terms of the merits and aesthetically, they are charged against him. And also, I guess in Chris Matthews' case, like Bernie wasn't like drinking with Tim O'Neill or something, or he doesn't remind him of Bobby Kennedy or whatever.
No, that is right. It's a good old boys network that way. I love that you throw that in at the end because that's exactly right. And that's the culture of MSNBC. And they're pitched when they're talked about in media as though they're progressive. There's not a progressive panelist on there. It's unbelievable. It is.
Cedar comes on sometimes. I'll get in trouble if I say that. Sam Cedar does his thing
occasionally, yeah. But it's just a fact that that's the media elite. They're just dressed up a little bit differently.
And look, we see these clips of panels from MSNBC. I mean, it's incredible because you'll have panelists say horrible things about Bernie Sanders, but they don't have any substance to back up their disdain or why they find him distasteful. I mean, one of the best examples was when Mimi Rocah said this.
For me, as again, I'm not the political analyst here, but just as a woman, probably considered a somewhat moderate Democrat, Bernie Sanders makes my skin crawl. And I can't even identify for you what exactly it is, but I see him as sort of a not pro-woman candidate.
So in any other context, if you are an expert and you're doing political analysis, it's unacceptable for you to say, this person makes my skin crawl, and I can't even tell you why. I think they hate women. How is that an acceptable statement to make on a news network?
That was one of the most loathsome political thoughts I've heard in any discourse around American politics. It was disgusting. I mean, it
was absolutely disgusting. And of course, as always, on the policy merits, his agenda would be a massive redistribution, reclaiming of wealth, in my phrase, that would have a huge benefit on, as an example, working class women, which I doubt Mimi Rocah cares about, frankly. I don't, that's how I feel when I watch her.
But again, that wasn't policy, that was something else, so.
Yeah, it's not based in fact, it's based on your feelings. And your feelings, I think are influenced by fears that you have of what Bernie Sanders could accomplish. Because he does, you're right, he does threaten the way not only wealth is distributed in this country, but the way power works in this country.
And social capital.
Right, such a great point. All right, well, let's move on to the final story of the day, and it's a good one. So, recently Dave Rubin
I'm sorry.
It's funny right off the bat, right? Recently, Dave Rubin invited Donald Trump Jr. on his program to discuss his latest book, which he bought bulk copies of in order to make it to the New York Times bestseller list. But nonetheless, let's go to this next clip where they're talking about the transgender community and how Dave Rubin thinks that it's a great idea to say terrible things about them. Take a look.
Yeah, and it's a constant movement of destruction because to lift somebody, you always have to take somebody else. So it creates a competing interest.
One day I'm going to have to do a podcast and ask you, because I mean, as a gay man, what are your thoughts as it relates to sort of, again, outspoken, activist, homosexual people getting owned by the trans movement, and like it's not enough after the years that you guys fought to get the equality that you have, Don, as that people probably pretend doesn't exist.
As I told you 8 years ago, all I ever wanted was exact equality under the law. That's what we've got. You can call, now we're equal. You call me whatever you want. You know what I mean? Like you could call me right now. It wouldn't mean anything to me.
Wow.
So we had to bleep out that word, but he thinks that it's okay for Don Jr. to call him a gay slur because he has the right to get married now. So that's all that matters.
Interesting ideas.
Yeah. So there are no protections on a federal level for the gay community. Let's just put that out there. Okay, so some states might have some protections, but on a federal level, those protections, remain to be seen. And so what does that do? That means that some of the red states can go ahead and discriminate against gay people in the name of religious liberty or whatever it is that they want to cite. That's a big problem. Secondly, when it comes to the transgender community, we're talking about people who have almost no power in America today, right? So many of them get murdered. So many of them are in such a terrible financial situation because of their identity. They don't get hired, they get discriminated against, and it leads to suicide. Suicide is very high within the transgender community. So to like talk about this as if like, no, we have all the rights in the world. Like you can go ahead and call me, a gay slur because everything's equal now. It's just not true. But I mean, Dave Rubin would have to read something to understand that.
But yeah, no, I mean, I don't understand. I feel like we gotta hold him to at least I believe George W. Bush used to talk about the soft bigotry of low expectations. And I have that for Dave Rubin. He's not, it's tough. Even I start to feel uncomfortable at a certain point. By the way, Don Jr., I just want to say, is looking very rested in that clip. I just noticed that. But besides that, I mean, it's hard. Like, I think there's actually been a good amount of work done to show that this is not a credible person and he's an object of comedy. The sentiment is actually genuinely disgusting for the really serious issues you just outlined there. But now it is like a character arc where it's like, dude, where is your like basic human dignity?
Yeah.
It's actually genuinely a little uncomfortable to watch.
Definitely. Look, during the break, I made a point about how his behavior really goes against human evolution, right? And the reason why I say that is because in order for humans to survive, I mean, you go back to the earliest periods. The way you survive is by having social groups, right? He has no social group because everyone hates him. And I'm not saying that to just simply dunk on him. I'm saying it because he has no values, he has no ethics, he has no morals, yada, yada. We all get that. But he has gone out of his way in the name of profit to turn his back on the very people who fought for his right to get married. But more importantly, do you think that the right wingers that he's like shilling for right now actually like him? I mean, they laugh at him. They've started protesting him at some of the events that he's been doing, which is out of control, right? And so I'm just saying, like, to what end? Like, I get it. I get that wealth is desirable for people. I get that, that Koch brother money is real sweet. But at the end of the day, I mean, what good is your life if you have no one to share it with?
Well, it is the money, of course, I suppose. It's just weird to see someone kind of turn themselves into sort of a lapdog for this guest who obviously doesn't share, you wouldn't think, values that in any way reflect your own. And yet, as you say, I don't watch him much, so I don't really get. So this is like, for me, it's sort of an education. But I've watched it a bit, and he does.
I mean, if you're gonna watch, you got to be ready. It's a heavy lift.
It is his MO, though, which is to kind of, as I say, just turn himself into a supplicant for whomever shows up on his show. In this case, on the opposite side of some of the basic values that you'd think his life would be about.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so at all.
I do want to quickly read a comment from one of our members. Der Machina says, I don't think it's fair to dunk on Dave Rubin. His brain is always recovering from so many high-level ideas, so it's too easy.
So he does have friends, is what you're telling me.
You can become a member, by the way, by going to tyt.com/join. I want to incorporate some of these member comments in our stories. But with that said, let's move on to the second part of this story, and it involves one of my favorite politicians, Representative Ocasio-Cortez. So recently, Dave Rubin had tweeted to Representative Ocasio-Cortez about how he had received some sort of email from her and he was very displeased. And he said, "Hi AOC, not sure who you bought my email from, but I assure you I didn't sign up for your mailing list. Also, you offering no way to unsubscribe. Please release me." Okay, so she responds, and this is such a good dunk and a very classy dunk. "This is the official congressional press list, not a supporter mailing list. Our apologies, as someone must have mistaken you for a journalist. That'll be fixed right away."
That's so strong.
Wow.
So that got, in that screenshot, you see how many likes it got, 122,000, what was it?
Can she call him the F word?
According to Dave, anyone
That would take it down.
I don't know. Maybe, hey, actually, wait a second. She supports getting rid of poverty, of course not.
So look, at that point, you gotta let it go, right? You've been murdered, you gotta let it go. But he can't help himself, so he responds back with this. "It's true, I'm not a journalist, nor have I ever pretended to be, but truly that was the most clever thing you've ever said."
Oh my God.
So the name of your show is Rubin Report. Okay, there's that. And then secondly, he's trying to insult her by calling her dumb, right? Yeah. She's not smart, except that's rich coming from Dave Rubin. My absolute favorite responses to Dave Rubin in this whole Twitter thread included the following. One person actually edited his Wikipedia page where it said, "Cause of death, murdered on Twitter by Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez," which you could read at the bottom. And then finally, this is one of my other favorite ones. This was a tweet that said, "Dave Rubin swears he hates socialism, but on this evidence, it's clear he loves being publicly owned." So good.
It's sad though. It's genuinely, but it's sad.
It is sad.
And it's also not good. And it's really bad. And a lot of people are saying it. And I've heard other people say it, and I thought it was embarrassing.
Of course it's embarrassing, but that's the thing. He puts himself in these positions.
He doesn't even, that you're so right, that he doesn't even just duck out after that. Right. He has to be like, "Ooh, well played." It's just like, dude, you can't pull this off. And then you're gonna call she's the youngest congresswoman in history, right?
Yes.
She's not bright. And just look up the Joe Rogan post office exchange.
Oh, we've played it on the show many times.
Literally thousands of examples of this guy's super high caliber intellect.
Yeah, there is this interesting trend where people in these giant glass houses are throwing stones, right? Where they're completely unaware and oblivious about their own lack of intelligence, but they love calling others stupid. Anyway, Michael Brooks, check him out on the Michael Brooks Show. And Mark Thompson, check him out on The Edge with Mark Thompson. Thank you so much, guys. This was a pleasure.
A lot of fun.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, and have a great weekend. We'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Friday post game, the 15th hour. Three amigos are here. I'm your host, Malcolm Fleshner. With me, Dave Kohler, Steve O. Yes, just the way you like it, or at least that's the way we do it. And we're here for another exciting episode of the 15th hour that you so enjoy. At least some of you do, 19 of you, and we appreciate you all. So we got lots to get to today, very exciting, but maybe not as much as usual. So we may run out of content, in which case we'll just shoot the breeze and we'll see what happens and have a good time with you. No matter what, it's gonna be a good time. But we're recording this 8 days in advance, so whatever's happened the last 8 days, we don't know. But I'm still pretty confident it was a great Friday power panel. I mean, not as great as last week's.
Yeah, it's usually pretty good.
It's usually pretty good. And so the first thing I wanted to do is talk about this day in history, and we have a very exciting anniversary. Very exciting. November 15th is the 100th anniversary of the birth of this guy. Who's that?
Judge Wapner.
Judge Wapner, that's right. And he died 3 years ago at 97, but he was the longtime judge on the People's Court. There it is. With there's Rusty the Bailiff, trusty Rusty the Bailiff, and Doug Llewellyn. I love how Rusty had to have a gun on the People's Court. Like there was, I mean, you never know what's going to happen in small claims court in general, but especially in a televised studio court.
I want you guys to guess how much money Judge Judy made in 2018.
2018, $15 million.
Yeah, all right. I was going to say that. So 18 million.
$148 million.
She made, that was her salary, or that's she owns the show, so she's got part of syndication.
That's what she, I don't know. That's what she made.
All of her compensation, everything that she got.
All in $148 million in 2018, Judge Judy. And you know what she said? The person to lead this country back to where it needs to be, Bloomberg. He's the only guy that can do it.
So somebody really rich thought that the best way to go was somebody else really rich. Interesting.
Yes.
Wow. Huh.
Amazing.
How much did Judge Wapner make in his whole life? It must be
nothing. So I bring that up in the context of Judge Wapner, who made that format popular and was the first mover in that. I'm sure made much less than $148 million in his entire career.
Yeah. So Judge Wapner, I mean, the reason I wanted to mention this is I think he's a cultural touchstone for our generation, and like the Academy Award-winning film Rain Man, People's Court and Judge Wapner play a pivotal role. But if you're a millennial watching Rain Man today, you might not even know what that's a reference to. I mean, you know what the People's Court is, you know that about, but it's very. Craig, you know Judge Wapner? You ever heard of Judge Wapner? Heard of it. Here's I know you've been sworn. I've read your complaint.
I've never watched it either. But
You've never watched it?
Yeah, I've never watched it.
Oh, Doug Llewellyn was the courtroom reporter who had like the perfect hair. And just was so cheesy. But yeah, there he is.
There it is.
I wonder what he's doing today. So yeah. Judge Wapner, so the show was on from 81 to 1993, and it was the first of its kind, this televised courtroom, small claims, and he became, sort of like the nation's, dad, sort of wise and doling out judgments. But he was a longtime jurist in Los Angeles. He was appointed by Ed Brown, Jerry Brown's father, in 1959 or something like that. He'd fought in World War II, and he had a well-established career, but he did 2,484 episodes of the People's Court. But then the ratings started to decline, and they canceled the show. And then they revived it a couple years later, and didn't tell him. And they brought in Judge Judy. They didn't, they just were like, we're done with you. And so he received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 2009. And he and Judge Judy are the only two TV jurists who've received that honor. But apparently he was publicly critical of her courtroom approach. He didn't like Judge Judy.
It's a TV show.
I don't know, maybe he didn't like that she was making $148 million.
No, I think he thought there should be some formality and some kind of dignified air to the whole judicial process. And she was just like, the sassy grandma
she makes it about
yelling
her
at people.
more than about the.
But she was definitely better for television.
Yeah. But he also had that appeal of being, that he was no nonsense and was straightforward, and that I mean, he made the show what it was initially. So anyway, that's Judge Wapner. The one other thing I wanted to mention about Judge
Is this
Wapner.
Dave's Graves? Is that what it is?
3 years.
Yeah, I mean it could be, but so on June 27, 1986, Wapner appeared on The Tonight Show to hear a case of David Letterman versus Johnny Carson over alleged damage to the headlight of Letterman's pickup truck when Carson had the truck towed to the studio. Wapner ruled in favor of Letterman, granting him $24.95. So I thought that was I mean, whenever I do these, I find out these little nuggets, and I don't remember that, but apparently that happened, and
he's a friend of the Mankiewicz family.
Is he? Was he?
Yeah.
They don't mention that in the story. In the although his son is a judge also now. Really? So Ben knew Judge Wapner?
I don't know if we're supposed to talk about this, but he attended or maybe even officiated Ben's first wedding.
Wow.
I hope we'll have to check if we can have to edit that out.
Right. The fact checking on the Friday post game is very strict.
No, the fact is correct, but the sensitivity of it.
What would be sensitive about that exactly?
What if the Russians find out?
What if Judge Judy finds out? She's gonna be pissed.
We're so screwed.
All right, so that's this day in history. Happy birthday, 100th birthday to the late Judge Wapner and his family. He was someone that we all grew up with to a degree, and he meant something culturally to us in our generation that now he doesn't. But it's like, it's a different era now. You're more brash, in-your-face era. The Judge Judy reflects, or there are other shows that have these crazy names. There's all sorts of. There's Judge Brown, I guess, and there's one
This is Kevin Ross.
This one's called Hot Something. Whatever, but
hot judge.
Yeah.
No, I'm being serious.
It's something. It's not a hot judge, like that. But there's one show that has a name like that I saw. I was like, what is that? So anyway, we're gonna move on because we have Inside Baseball to get to, and we wanna watch that intro again.
Here's the pitch.
Yes. And for those of you who are wondering, no, we have not updated it. We were true to our word. And we said we should, but we're not going to because we're too lazy. We have not. And this Inside Baseball, it actually also there's overlap with another segment we do, which we have a graphic for, called what? Where the fuck did Steve-O go? And you have a
graphic is so lazy. Like the words are falling off the edge of the screen.
That's just for us. I think
that's just for us.
I don't think that's true for them. But I'm terrible, but I'm not that terrible. But you love the photo. You're giving me a hard time on it last week about my photo.
In that photo, so I'm happy about it.
You're fit. Okay, so what is the story that you're going to tell us about, Steve?
So there's all this hype about Popeye's fried chicken sandwiches. So a couple of things happened. I was home visiting, home being East Brunswick, New Jersey, and there's a Popeye's fried chicken in New Jersey, in East Brunswick. I don't know how old it is. It's been there for at least several years, but recently my mom went there. My mom says, have you ever heard of this place called Popeye's? It is delicious fried chicken. And just a couple of, like half a block down is a KFC. She says, I don't know who would go to KFC. Popeye's is so much better. Now, for those who don't know, Jank and I had a very famous fight back in 1990, the year before 1991, when we were on a road trip to
college students.
Yes, we're on a road trip we're in Florida. We're in Orlando, Florida, and we're gonna have dinner one night. And I said, let's go eat at Popeye's fried chicken because it's awesome. And Jank says, no. KFC is the best fried chicken, and even though I've never had Popeyes, it can't possibly be better than KFC. So I said, no, let's go to, and I'm not gonna back down with Jack. So we had this huge, heated argument where we're yelling at each other.
Yeah.
And the other 4 people in the car were held kind of hostage because neither one of us would budge.
I love being in that situation when you're in a group of people and 2 people just start going off on each other, and the rest of you are just like looking at each other like, what is happening here?
Yeah, and it was over Popeyes versus KFC.
Yeah, so it mattered.
Yeah, it mattered deeply. But I was so angry because I was like, Jank, I went to both. You only went to one. I went to both. I'm telling you that Popeyes is better than KFC. So why wouldn't my word matter more in this instance than yours?
I know what he said. He said tick, 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 tick.
But Jack was being his usual obstinate self, and he just refused. He's like, no. I've had KFC and nothing could be better. I'm like, and by the way, he totally admits now that he was 100% wrong. So anyway, it was funny to have my mom validate me like 30 years later.
Yeah, without any she had not known, she was not aware, obviously, of this debate. She was one of the 4 people in the back seat.
Right. So because of all of this, I decided, you know what, I'm gonna check out the Popeyes fried chicken. So after work, I was driving past one, but the line was insanely long. The drive-through line was so long that you couldn't even get in there. It was coming out to the street, and there's a line of cars. And then I thought maybe I'll park and go inside, but no there's a line coming out of the store. I was like, this is ridiculous. So I said, forget it. Then yesterday I went to a different Popeyes, and this one doesn't have a drive-through. It's in Hollywood. So I parked my car and I went, and the line didn't seem that bad. I sent you pictures. Did you?
Yeah, I got the photos. They're all there.
So this is after I've been waiting about 20 minutes already.
Did it go out the door or was it?
It was out the door, but I didn't realize how slow it was. So it took me 45 minutes to get my food, and then I got the classic fried chicken sandwich and the spicy fried chicken sandwich.
We have that also. We should have that image also.
Yeah. So the one on the left is the classic. One on the right is spicy, and they're almost the same. And then instead of fries, I looked at the calorie count, and I got the mashed potatoes with Cajun gravy instead, and a Coke. So
it looks like it's worth waiting 45 minutes.
Yeah, so I told myself I would just eat half of each sandwich.
Did Popeyes get how many stars on the Michelin Guide? Does Popeyes get?
They got 4 stars. So I ate it. Was the food good? It was outstanding. It was delicious. Was it worth a 45-minute wait? Absolutely not. People are freaking crazy. What are they doing waiting 45 minutes for the sandwich? But it was good, and I think it was better than Chick-fil-A.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Chick-fil-A, do they do fried chicken also, or?
They do fried and they do grilled. But Chick-fil-A has this, they're a bad corporation towards the LGBT community. I don't know anything about Popeyes. I don't want to know. I ate their fried chicken. It was good. I don't want to feel guilty about it, so it's all good.
Is the irony? Can you order spinach at Popeyes? I mean, I'm vegetarian, so I don't know any of this stuff.
No,
is all
they have incredibly good sides. So really, my mom is correct. Who would go to KFC? Popeyes is so much better.
Line's a lot shorter, I bet.
Yeah, and the sides are even better. So Popeyes has the Cajun gravy over mashed potatoes. They have the red beans and rice, which are awesome, and other things. But it was weird. I mean, this cult or this cultish following all of a sudden that Popeyes got for their fried chicken sandwiches. And apparently this is not a permanent menu item. It's like a new thing that's, at least for now, temporary. And there are like fist fights up in the Bay Area over people who are waiting in lines and they're getting angry because they've been waiting for so long. America's a weird place. I mean, it really is, right? And the way the fads come and go, and people do these weird things and wait in these obscene lines. There's a place called Pink's Hot Dogs here in LA, and people wait in giant lines for that. I had the hot dog there. It's unremarkable. It's like any other hot dog anywhere. It's no better than a street hot dog in New York City, but the lines are stupid.
In-N-Out Burger has lines constantly.
Yes.
Wherever you go. Out of the time of day, lines are very long, and I only know that because I get a burger without the burger when I go there. That's definitely not worth waiting in line for.
You get the grilled cheese?
Yeah, the grilled cheese and their fries are terrible also.
Love the fries.
Oh, the fries are the worst.
Fries are the best.
Especially if you wait like 10 minutes, they're almost inedible. So do you think should the government step in and force places like Popeyes and Pink's and the like to have at regular intervals little signs say, like at Disneyland, 45-minute wait from here, 30-minute wait, 40-minute, and so on and so forth?
No, of course not. What a ridiculous
No, of course not, they shouldn't. But if they did have those signs, like if you had gone and stood in that line and there was things saying, average wait time from here is 45 minutes.
I would not have stayed.
Right.
Yeah, because in fact, I was in line and it was moving so slowly, I had to actually get out of line, go back and put more money in the meter. And it wasn't just me, it was multiple people who did that.
So maybe you should, the key is to get a job, working the line, paying people's meters for them, charging them.
Yeah, so this is an unfamiliar Popeyes for me. So the line that was outside the door was not that many, it was just a few people. But once I got inside, I didn't realize how long the restaurant was, and the line was very, very long. And into the restaurant, the line was like, it was like 4 people clustered into like one line.
Yeah.
So it was bad.
That happens sometimes. You're at an airport or whatever, and you're going through whatever security, and you're like, oh well, yeah, it doubles back, and then you get around one curve, and you're like, oh no, it goes into the other room. And then you're like, oh no, I'm gonna miss my flight. That is that feeling is like, oh, when you realize your wait is probably twice as long as you thought. But I guess the question is, will you go back?
No. Well, if the lines are not there, I go to Popeyes like once or twice a year. I mean, I love it, but it's not very healthy. I can't eat it all the time, but I enjoy it. So
you're gonna stay fit like in your photo,
right? But it's okay. I'm gonna play basketball tonight, so it'll be gone. Yeah, but there's no way I'm waiting in line for 45 minutes for a sandwich. That's crazy talk. Yeah.
All right, Dave, do you have any inside baseball for us? I didn't even ask you. Your life is that exciting, huh?
Well, this is not about life. Or I guess it could be. If we have time at the end, I want to talk about these community meetings I'm going into.
Okay, if we have time at the end.
TYT inside baseball.
Did you want to talk about the healthcare thing?
Yeah.
So Steve had one other inside baseball story. We don't need to see the graphic again, video again.
So I was gonna bring it in, but I forgot to bring it in. But I got this big thick packet from my insurance company. I was like, what is this? So I open it up. It's like 10 pages of documentation about my last doctor's visit, which I don't even remember when it was. And they sent me a check for $1.05. Apparently, I had overpaid my provider by $1.05. So they sent me this refund check plus all this documentation to show the billing summaries and blah, blah, blah. And I'm not sure if I even cashed the check. I might have just thrown it away. Yeah. All right.
You're probably gonna be getting haranguing phone calls.
I was so disgusted and annoyed by this. I was like, this is why our healthcare costs are the way they are. I mean, how much did it cost for how many people to figure out this billing issue and then go through whatever accounting system they have to issue me this refund? You know what kind of bullshit I have to go through here at TYT to get reimbursed for my expenses? Dave knows. It's a giant hassle, right? You know, it's a giant hassle. So at a big corporation like that, how much money are they spending to issue these ridiculous refunds? And why should there even be a refund? Why am I paying out of pocket? Right?
Well, yeah.
I mean, the whole thing makes no sense when you think about it. I mean, we're just so accustomed to the insanity of our healthcare system that we think it's normal. And we think any radical deviation from that is crazy talk. But it's actually incredibly crazy the way it is today and has to change.
One thing that really frustrates me about the discussion of healthcare in the presidential election right now is that, with the exception of Bernie and to an extent Elizabeth Warren, nobody talks about the problems. They say, oh, I'm gonna give you choice. And the people who are opposed to Medicare for all, they don't acknowledge the horrors of the existing system. They don't, and maybe they don't know. Maybe Pete Buttigieg doesn't know what it's like to have co-pays and have, get bills for random amounts, and you go to the emergency or not go to the emergency room because you're afraid of the price, or not go to the doctor. I mean, it would be nice if that was part of the discussion, so that when Pete Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar and Joe Biden explain why you can't have Medicare for all, how they're gonna address these problems, which are very real, although they're not, obviously.
Well, so here's what I don't quite understand. I have literally what's called the Platinum Plan, right? That's what it's called. It's the most expensive, best insurance I can buy. I have that. So I don't have, and I'm fortunate that I don't worry about co-pays and blah, blah, blah. That said, I'm still in the dark as to how this all works out if someone in my family got really, really sick.
You still don't know what your coverage is.
Exactly. I don't know if my coverage.
You're not an informed consumer making logical choices.
I don't know if they can shut my coverage down next year, the year after, or 5 years after that. Like, there's a sense of foreboding doom, even for people like me who is in the best position possible, right? So Buttigieg and these other people, like they must in the back of their minds think the same thing. Like, what happens to me if something bad really happens? Although maybe if they have millions of dollars, they don't care. But I mean, if you get cancer, So my wife, when she had her first baby, it was a C-section, emergency C-section. You know what the bill was on that? It was $140,000. Now that was covered by insurance, right? But what if our insurance had lapsed? Or what if we didn't have it because we didn't have a job at the time? I mean, how do you pay that? You can't pay that.
You go bankrupt.
Yeah, you go bankrupt, right? Maybe homeless. It's crazy the system that we have.
So I have a bunch of things to say. First, the Affordable Care Act got rid of lifetime maximums, so you should try to rest a little easier. No, they're not gonna tap you out on your insurance if there's some disaster in your family. And what's covered, what's not covered, you can look that up pretty easily. You go to a website, there's a brochure there. We do have excellent health insurance.
But they also will, but these insurance companies will try to deny coverage of things that they're supposed to cover also. So it's not like that's unprecedented.
That happens. I don't think that's happening with the TYT insurance carrier and the platinum plans. The TYT employees will definitely, I'm pretty sure, will definitely lose out if we go to Medicare for all.
Yeah, I don't know if the TYT employees know how good our insurance is. I don't think they do, because I've been at many other companies. My wife has been at many other companies.
She's at one right now.
Yeah, and she's like, both of us are like, we have never seen a plan this good and this generous by the employer. So it's me and my kids are on the TYT plan. My wife has to do her separately through her company because it's a bureaucratic reason. Anyway, but she pays way more for herself as an individual than I do for my family here at TYT with a better plan.
But TYT pays more.
TYT pays more, yeah.
Now, adding to this, so this is like inside baseball. So our plans, first of all, are all changing next year. So yes, they do change. And so tell Amy Klobuchar that our friggin' insurance company is changing our plans. Now the truth is the changes are small, minor, cosmetic, but they're changing.
Yeah.
And I thought that's
if you like your plan, you can keep it.
Yeah, no, you can't. They're changing it on us, and they're raising the rates 15%. That is significant. But there's another great provision of the Affordable Care Act that doesn't get talked about, and it goes to Steve's point about the giant envelope for the $1.05 check. There's a insurance companies cannot spend more than 20% of the revenue they take in, or the premiums they take in, on administrative costs. And if they do, they refund it. And TYT got a big refund check last year and this year again. So there is a cap on how much BS administrative costs that they can incur for themselves. That's an excellent provision of the Affordable Care Act.
Right, but compared to Medicare for All, where the administrative costs
like
are
4%.
Yeah,
sure. Yeah, I'm not defending it. Although we are going to lose out if we go to Medicare for all. I will say that the country as a whole will gain.
But it will cost TYT less as a company because that's an expense that TYT doesn't have.
Yes, TYT is paying a lot of money for this excellent plan that we have. Yeah.
All right, well, let's move on. That's thank you, Steve, for sharing that with us. We got more to get to, and not last week, 2 weeks ago, we did this show and we talked about some sort of we called it sort of mini aggressive progressives type content, and we did the story from Chris Hedges where he talked about if you don't know who Chris Hedges is, he's a journalist and a real sort of social critic, and suggesting that whatever we're doing to try to stop global warming is not working. It's not going to happen, and we need massive protest, people in the streets, and even that the likelihood is not going to be. Realistically, we're looking at either the extermination of humanity or 70% of us dying out, and the other 30 just sort of barely getting by and trying to figure out a new normal. So some people suggest that was not real upbeat.
Yeah, look, I mean,
right, and you were on Chris Hedges' side.
Yeah,
so am I. I mean,
but no, but I slightly disagree with him in the sense that I don't think mass protests or anything will do anything. Like that's not enough. My point is, if every single government and every single corporation agreed today to work as cohesively as possible to combat the impact of global climate change, if they decided today, I think it's still too late.
Right.
Okay? and we're nowhere close to that, right? So so every single large organizational body across the globe, governments, NGOs, corporations, your local Boy Scouts, every single group said, this is our #1 priority. Let's do something today. I think we might have a shot. Maybe, even then I think it's probably too late.
But that's not going to happen without the protests.
because governments they're not just going to step up and do that on their own.
Yeah, if we start protesting today, they might come to an agreement 15 years from now, and they might start implementing something 20 years from now, and it's too late.
Right. Yeah. So, but what his point is like to give us even a chance, we need to shut it down. The people need to not just go protest, put on their pussy hats and have their signs, then get back in their cars and go home and feel like they did something. We need to step it up and apply pressure to the powers that be and make them hurt. And throw ourselves on the machine, the gears of the machine. Famously, what was his name? Berkeley. I forgot his name. Doesn't matter. So this week I wanted to highlight some people who are doing things that are I find encouraging, and I wanted to applaud and support, not necessarily about climate change, but just in general. And the first one comes to us from New York, and here's the story. We have a video, I'll throw the video in a second, but it's about the New Yorkers who are protesting police violence, specifically about the increased police presence in the subways and police violence against young African-American males who turnstile jumpers, who the police response is excessive and violent, and only the victims are predominantly people of color, young men of color, and so the people are upset about it. And so I got this story from, I don't remember where I got the story, but from complex.com. So if you go to the story, it says, according to Gothamist, the initial demonstration was organized by the activist movement Decolonize This Place. Nearly 1,000 protesters started above ground at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn and then stormed the Hoyt-Schermerhorn Street station, jumping the turnstiles and chanting on the platform. The protesters were heard chanting, "How do you spell racist? NYPD." And before we go on to the story, we have video, short video of what this looked like. And I think we have the video. Do we have the video? All right, so that's a little snippet of what was going on, and the protesters were jumping the turnstiles. They're saying we're going to do what you can't stop us all, and it's a case in point of how mass movement, people coming together, are in numbers can overwhelm the authorities and push back effectively. And so we can go back to the story. This protest comes after multiple instances in which the NYPD cracked down on alleged turnstile jumpers by using what some perceive as drastic measures. Last weekend, video emerged of 19-year-old Adrian Napier being swarmed by police on a subway just a day before 2 teens were punched in the face by an officer. The family of one of the teens is now suing. Napier and his mother were both in attendance at Friday's protest. And so I think do we have one more? One more? Yeah, we needed to react quickly because what we're seeing is this additional 500 cops that Cuomo has authorized are waging a war on poor people of color, an organizer with Decolonize This Place, Amin Hussein, said about the protest. It's taking the form of fare evasion and it's bullshit. So what they're saying is they're using the excuse of turnstile jumpers and fare evasion to crack down on people of color, and that the cost of adding 500 cops to the New York subway patrol outweighs whatever the cost of turnstile jumpers, which is minimal, and it's unnecessary, and it's just an excuse. So I wanted to applaud all those people who were protesting in New York and who went down there and made a show of force and said we're not going to tolerate it anymore. There's no guarantee it's going to be successful. There's no guarantee that Andrew Cuomo is going to respond, and I don't know what De Blasio can do, but I would like to see more of this. People saying, look, we don't have to follow the rules. We get together and you can't stop us. And they can stop you, obviously, if they want to escalate force and start shooting people. But this is people taking the initiative and taking their own hands, and that they realize that they have power. And the funny thing is, I got this video from the New York Post, which the story was all about, cop haters, flagrantly break the law, and it's all about how terrible all these people are. They must hate the cops so much, and it was comical how biased the story was in the Post. But that's the New York Post, so it's not surprising.
Let me ask you this, Malcolm. So all the people who protested, the Million Man March, whatever. After Trump was elected, there was all those protests all over the country. If all those people, instead of protesting, they all just closed their bank account with the big banks.
Yeah.
And let's say sign up a aspiration.com account or some, their local community bank or whatever it may be. Do you think that would have had a much more profound effect on bringing about change?
I don't know. It would be much more inconvenient. Because going out to a protest for one day is something you can do and feel good about yourself, whereas taking money out of a bank is a huge bureaucratic pain in the ass.
It's a pain in the ass, but it would take you a whole day, right? So you set up a new account, and then you have to go figure out all the automated payments and withdrawals and all that, and switch it all over to the new account. That would take you a whole day.
It almost would be, right? Instead of, what I would say is, instead of going out and protesting Trump en masse on the streets, everyone goes to their bank branches and protest there to get in line to take your money out.
Yeah.
And that would have a much, that would be interesting.
So you go to the bank.
So it's both a protest, getting out there in mass and showing up force, but it's also doing what you're saying.
Yeah, so I think that would have the big banks scrambling with emergency board meetings on what they should do right away to address this issue. And they might say, you know what, we're not gonna invest in any more fossil fuels.
Maybe, or maybe they would just get the billions of dollars in quantitative easing more from the government, and that would make up for it. I don't know. So Dave, you got anything on this? So the next story I wanted to get to is comes from Northern California, and it's this one. It's comes from I'm not sure what the outlet is. This is a small one also, but about forest defenders disrupt active logging site for third consecutive day at Rainbow Ridge. Rainbow Ridge is an area where there are redwoods. One of the, if you look at a map of where redwood forests were in California before the white people came, and now the little pockets that remain, it's depressing. But there are still pockets that can be cut down, and God damn it, they're going to cut them down. So this is in Humboldt County. And it's the Rainbow Ridge is the specific area. It's the Rainbow Ranch Timber Harvest Plan, where their various companies are looking to take the lumber, cull the lumber. But the forest defenders there are concerned about fire risk, the conservation value of cutting down the forest, and the lack of accountability to local residents that the companies have. So they have been on and off protesting, and not just protesting, but putting themselves in the line of fire, chaining themselves to bulldozers, things like that. So if we go to the story, in the early afternoon, forest defenders approached the area where workers with the contractor Lewis Logging were felling trees and moving logs. Forest defenders positioned their bodies in the path of a bulldozer, refused to move, and engaged the operator in conversation. Work was disrupted for a few hours before loggers left for the day. And of course, people get arrested. There's also their tree sitters who are participating in this over the summer, and
This is the stereotypical tree hugger.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, except they're not just hugging trees; they chain themselves to the tree. And so this is an ongoing effort in Northern California. And we go back to the story. Forest defenders intend to continue to resist logging on Rainbow Ridge, said Meredith Dyer, a spokesperson for Earth First Humboldt, a group in support of frontline forest defenders on Rainbow Ridge. The forest here is a diverse ecosystem, a habitat corridor connecting the Lost Coast wilderness to the redwoods. With every tree felled, road built, HRC is directly destroying endangered species habitat and contributing to climate change, removing hope that future generations have of surviving catastrophic climate collapse.
I knew it. Hillary Rodham Clinton is directly destroying endangered species.
I never liked her. I didn't vote for her. So that's. I just wanted to send just a shout out to the forest defenders. These people who are putting themselves on the line and at personal risk because people die. People die in this sort of situations. Tensions run high, and not usually, but it can happen. So people who are putting themselves, they're getting arrested and putting themselves at personal risk, like the valve turners. These are the people who are going to determine whether we have any chance and whether they are inspiring other people to follow their lead. As you say, the chances are slim, but it's between slim and none. And I think these people are the ones who are determining which it's going to be.
Well, that's what the folks at Helm's Deep thought. They thought they had no chance, but they survived.
What's Helm's Deep? I don't know what
You're not a nerd, are you? Sad. Craig, tell them what it is.
Oh, that's in. This is Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, okay. I should have known.
I thought you first was Jesse Helms. I'm like, what are you talking about? Craig, you know what Steve's saying? Yeah, Helms Deep. Yeah, you should be inspired by what happened at Helms Deep.
It's the second book of the trilogy, The Two Towers. There's a group of people, okay, in the city of Rohan or the kingdom of Rohan, and the orcs under Saruman. He made these Uruk-hai who are more powerful than regular orcs. They could be out in the sun. They're very strong. So these orcs come, I think tens of thousands of them. And there's just a little group of people just holding out in what's known as Helm's Deep. They hang on and hang on. They get some reinforcements from the elves, and then there's a happy ending. They win at the end, but the point is looked like they had no chance, none whatsoever. They fought hard, they fought bravely, and they won. So yes, despite my pessimism, there's always a chance if you fight. What?
I don't know.
I don't know what that was. Yeah.
Presumably that's Sauron, or you mean nerd? Okay, that's a little clearer.
Bart's calling me nerd. Okay. Dweeb.
That's good. Okay.
I hear what he said.
Is that Barry White saying dweeb? It's somebody with a really deep voice. That's good.
That was Barry White.
Hey, how about that? Okay, why is Barry White saying dweeb?
Well, there's an answer to that, I'm sure.
Yeah, there's an answer to that. It was part of David Letterman's countdown, and it was Barry White saying certain words in Barry White's voice.
And how long have you been sitting on that, ready to spring it?
As soon as Steve mentioned Lord of the Wings, Dungeons and Dragons, whatever, dude. I always have that ready in the hopper.
He should have that ready whenever Steve's on camera. All right, so we know what Barry White thinks of you. So, all right, let's go to the last story I have, which I wanted to share with you, is this one. In glimmer of accountability, executives loggers charged in 2014 murders of 4 indigenous land defenders in Peru. This is another, it's a story that involves the murders of indigenous activists, so it can't be positive in that regard. But in the sense that there might actually be justice for them, that's a glimmer of accountability is what it's called. One person described it. So yeah, 5 men have been charged from the logging industry, been charged with the murders of 4 indigenous land protectors who died in 2014 or killed in 2014. So we can go to the story. After a years-long investigation, 2 executives and 3 loggers were formally accused on Wednesday of murdering Edwin Chota, Jorge Rios Perez, Leoncio Quintisima, and Francisco Pinedo in 2014. The 4 men had fought illegal logging in the Upper Tamaya, Soweto, Ashaninka territory in the Amazon of Peru, where they were found shot to death. So it turns out that in 2018, the year Judge Judy made how much?
$148 million.
$148 million. 164 land defenders were killed in Peru. And the idea that anybody would be brought to justice for these murders is, as one person in the article described it, unprecedented, especially industry executives. So the glimmer of accountability is what is encouraging people in this area of the Amazon in Peru. They were these 4 who were killed had filed formal complaints with prosecutors in their territory about illegal logging. 80% of the logging exports from Peru are obtained illegally by the timber industry. So it seems like there's a lot of rampant illegality going on, and that's probably not going to shock anyone. But if we go back to the story, the 4 men were among 10 land defenders from around the world who were killed in 2014 amid disputes with logging industries. According to Global Witness, which tracks the killings of environmental campaigners every year, 116 people were killed that year in struggles against agribusiness, mining companies, and other corporate interests. 40% of those killed were indigenous peoples. And let me go back, let's keep going with the story. Illegal loggers were immediately suspected by the local community of being behind the killings, but supporters expressed doubt in 2014 that anyone would be held to account, because nobody ever is. There's so much corruption in the regional governments that these logging mafias can kill our brothers with impunity, Henderson Renfigo of the Peruvian indigenous rights organization AIDSEP told The Guardian at the time. But if they're convicted, the suspects face the prospect of 35 years in prison. Maybe this is all for show and distraction, and they won't see any prison time. But it's better than what anybody would have expected from this situation, which is dire, really. And the admiration for these indigenous activists who face overwhelming odds against them and nothing. I mean, they're killed with impunity, and then you got these industry executives who are ordering the deaths. I talk about Ken Saro-Wiwa in Nigeria.
But the 35 years, it's not going to be served by the executives of the company.
That's what they're charged with.
The executives?
The executives.
Not the ones who actually did the killing?
There's 5. There are 3 who were responsible for the actual killings and 2 who ordered it, allegedly. It just says that they're 35 years. The suspects each face up to 35 years in prison, so it could be 10 years for the executives because we're ordering. Who knows? I didn't. Again, as usual with
not
me,
enough
research by me to prepare for the Friday post game. And I apologize.
Maybe you should get an intern or something.
Maybe I should get or somebody else. I have extra graphics now. I just found out today.
Yeah.
That's exciting that I didn't know existed and don't really want. Dave, you got any thoughts on the indigenous activists?
No, I mean it's sad and bad enough when you hear stories about people going and destroying vegetation in sensitive environments or killing animals. But when they kill a human, it's inconceivably bad.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to think that this is going to inspire any of this to stop. But that is one way you do discourage it, by putting people in jail. So all right, so we have time to move on to annoying feedback, which if we have the intro for that, I'd love to see it also.
Worst intro.
I did say I wanted to see it. I didn't say I wanted to hear it.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to hear it. So the annoying feedback is when we talk back to you. You give us your thoughts and your comment on the Friday post game. Not only do you get your name in the hat for Weekly World News, but you also possibly could get a response or at least acknowledged on Friday post game. Main Show doesn't do that. Cenk reads tweets. No. Your members, you comment. You might actually get into annoying feedback. So let's look at the first page of comments. All right, this one comes from JKM Young, who said, been starved for a real Friday postgame that I even miss Bernie's wrap-up voice. So they were alone in that.
Oh, well, I'm sorry.
That's good. Thank you, JKM Young. Nomad Princess says, I really missed you guys and was getting ready to write an angry email to TYT thinking that they had canceled you. I will not stand for that. Thank you, Nomad Princess. This is in reference to the fact that we were off for almost a month, but we've come back and come back strong-ish. Dietrich Buxtehude says, Friday postgame is awesome. I think it's best when you guys aren't as distracted by random things so you can focus on your guys' prepared segments. Great job, guys.
Agreed.
I don't know what that means even.
I think they just want us to prepare more.
Again, that's my point. More research.
They're on Steve's side. More work for me, and now we just have random. I don't even know what this is.
Barnacles.
Okay, so next feedback, annoying or otherwise. The first one comes from Juicy Avocado. Watching the Friday postgame for the first time. Hello, guys. Hello, Juicy Avocado.
So who did we lose when Juicy Avocado came in?
I don't know. Probably maybe just one of my sock puppet accounts, because the 19 is probably the high end. Z Weiler 27 says, one more Friday, one more Weekly World News, and one more week of being snubbed from being one of the chosen. That's a lot of ones. I'm sorry. It's like the last honest thing in the world is our hat. There's nobody putting their thumb on the scale. It's
Z Weiler sends me a couple $100,000. That could make it happen.
Yeah. Okay. Good luck with that. He just closed out his account, Steve. I'm not going back to the bank. All right. Wait. Was there one more on that page? Yes, Bernie Rise says, hi friends. I normally don't watch Friday postgame, but when I saw your comment about a Chris Hedges article, I had to watch. Thanks for the comment. I am a Chris Hedges fan.
Can you be a Friday postgame show fan?
Yeah. Okay. The funny thing is, this person doesn't ever say, now that I watched it, I like it.
Yeah.
Now that I watched it, I'm still a Chris Hedges fan. you three, nah.
Now, if you don't mind, I'm going to go back to reading my Chris Hedges book, and we'll never watch the Friday postgame again. What I don't like is this is a TYT member who's watching the main show, where they would never have Chris Hedges on or talk about anything that Chris Hedges does, but we actually talk about that sort of thing and share a perspective with. And then this guy's like, yeah, maybe once, but I'm done with you. I don't want to. That totally true or totally bullshit stuff. I'm not interested in. This day in history, yawn. Okay, next. Bodega Boy Wanda says, I love these guys. They are so horrible that they are freaking fantastic. I like Malcolm, he carries the show well. Steve is an awesome dude on there. And Dave just hates life and everyone in it. These are supposed to be compliments.
Yeah, well, it's annoying feedback.
I don't think that's an accurate representation of your attitude, Dave. Maybe there are people who perceive it that way, but thank you, I guess.
No, it's partly because of the image that you project. You're a bitter movie critic. You're whatever, right?
Yeah, it's his persona.
Sourpuss.
Your brand.
Yeah,
very on brand for you.
But what the audience doesn't see is the zest for life that Dave has on these trips, where he gets super excited about little things and deeply appreciates all the small but wonderful, joyful moments in life.
Right. He has a little bird he keeps in his pocket and feeds the worms that come in the food, just like in what's that the movie? Shawshank Redemption. So there's more from that page, right? There was something else. Doctor at Heart says, "Damn it! I thought they got rid of the Friday post game for good, and it's back. Ugh." So it's confusing. Yeah, so that's a mixed message we're getting today. But thank you for your honesty, Doctor. And next. IAPEC mysterious creator Crab of Decapitation, who won a T-shirt on Weekly World News, provided this update. And I had gotten his or her name wrong, but I guess I said IAPEC Crab of Destruction, and he said that was close enough. Kathy OK is a member of the Proud 19 who reported a solicitation to delivery time of 5 months in the comments for the September 13th Friday post game, the episode where Steve won me the prestigious opportunity to solicit a shirt. Despite having pretty much zero control over these things, I took this as a challenge. Thanks to the fine folks at shoptyt.com and TYT member services, this process has been streamlined enough that it only took 20% of that time, a grand total of 28 days.
That's great.
The process works.
That's awesome.
That's two examples, Kathy Ock and
Right.
Yeah, that's great.
And who was it? Ringworm needs to check in, because last week was Ringworm was complaining that Ringworm had not received his or her shirt, and for which, as I say, I take no responsibility and never claimed that you would get a shirt. So, but if you have, let us know, because we'd like to know. And if you haven't, get in touch with IAPEC and say, what's your magic, what's your secret sauce? But don't wait 45 minutes for it.
No.
All right, next one. What else we got? Reese says, listening to you, Malcolm, is reminiscent of reading the writings of the Spanish in the New World. You describe the actions of those across the world, but not that of Americans, your own people. Regarding Elizabeth Warren, many people's family discussed their Native American heritage. In the 90s, without DNA testing, what is one to do other than respond to ethnicity inquiries based on family information? Calling her out as a liar is questionable. She did what she thought. Sadly, a student of mine doesn't want to vote for Warren based on this. Okay, so leave it up for a second. The first part is saying that I'm like the Spanish, like the conquistadors in the New World, describing the actions of others, but not of themselves. I think this is a criticism.
I think it is.
I read it, and I think this is saying, how can you talk about like what the Nigerians are doing to each other without acknowledging what the United States is doing? If that is the criticism, I think it's a misreading of what we do with Weekly World News. The point of Weekly World News is just to talk about international stories that typically don't get covered on the main show, not to pretend like stories here in the United States don't happen, and what the United States is doing around the globe is not important. If that doesn't come across, or I'm misinterpreting your comment.
Yeah, I don't know anyone who's more critical of the US than us, right? In fact, we're accused of hating the US, right? Why do you hate America?
I mean, part of the whole point of it is that to not be so US centric.
Right.
That's if it's coming across like we're trying to pretend that the US isn't causing or responsible for harm across the globe, then that is not our intention for sure.
Yeah.
And the second part, what was this? Oh, the second part was about Elizabeth Warren, and I'm sympathetic to Elizabeth Warren saying that she, her family, the story wasn't the family, that she was part Cherokee. She passed that on, and then it became a big deal. And that's not something that I'm critical of her for. The question I think that this person, Reese, is responding to was a totally true or totally bullshit about whether Donald Trump is going, if she is the nominee, if he is going to successfully apply that and use that against her. And what Reese seems to be saying is, at least with this student, it's working. It's had some effect. We were not judging. I don't think we were judging Elizabeth Warren on whether she should have said what she did or not. We were just looking at the situation as it is and saying, will this have an impact on the presidential race?
Yeah.
So I hope that addresses your concerns, and I didn't misinterpret both of them. But wrong. Next, what was next? Yes, okay. This is the last one. I am with Steve-O on climate change. I tend to think in terms of the most dire consequences. I think that our societies, which are so dependent upon the decisions of oligarchs, will almost certainly bring about massive change in the human population. This is from Ness, by the way. The rich will be the ones left inhabiting our choking planet and moving on to other worlds if they're lucky. And then the real Schopenhauer says, gotta say, I also agree with Steve. It looks grim. Human beings are inherently irrational. Anyway, funny and playful 1 week, thoughtful and serious the next. This is why the Friday post game is awesome. Cheers, guys, and stay strong. So let's talk about the first part, which is, I don't know that the rich are going to be insulated from the effects of climate change.
They have more options.
More options, but if the food sources dry up, if the droughts are, and they also, you can't barricade yourself in and insulate yourself from if the air is poison that you're breathing, you can't go get your own air.
No, at first, the food won't just disappear, it'll get more expensive.
Right.
And that'll impact the rich less.
Right.
And they'll be able to move, like you say, to a place where the air is still okay.
Yeah, you guys are familiar with all the recent wildfires, of course, and that's caused mass evacuations for a ton of people. So the Getty fire that happened really in probably the most expensive neighborhood, if not top 2 or 3.
LeBron.
Yeah. So all those people who were evacuated, they spent time at a really nice hotel for the 4 or 5 days that they were gone. Meanwhile, up further north, I forget the name of the fire. A lot more people were evacuated.
In LA, so in the LA area?
Yeah, like up in the Santa Clarita region. They didn't get to spend, a week at a nice hotel. They had to find relatives or drive great distances or, go to shelters. I mean, their choices are much, much more limited. So yes, the rich, it hits them too, they're not insulated, but they have many, many layers of comfort before they feel the effects themselves.
Right, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But it's not like, if you're rich and you're saying, well, climate change may be a problem, but I can just move somewhere else and be fine, I think you're sadly mistaken.
Yes.
And also at the end, bring the comment back up. He or Ness, it's a he, I think, said, the rich will be the ones left inhabiting our choking planet and moving on to other worlds if they're lucky. I think that's a pipe dream. That's crazy. That's not happening. But not in time for before climate change.
Rich people leaving the earth to live somewhere else now.
No. Yeah.
Every rich person today will be dead. Like maybe their generations later, perhaps, if they can keep their wealth, but not the ones who are alive today. No way.
Yeah. Sorry, Jeff Bezos. What was go back? There was one thing I wanted to comment on about the last one. Yeah. Well, this thing about human beings are inherently irrational. I talked last week about possibly resuscitating the TYT book club, and one of the books we might talk about is Civilized to Death by Chris Ryan. And one of the things that he talks about in Civilized to Death and in his previous book, Sex at Dawn, is that the societies we live in are not the societies, civilization is not what we didn't evolve to live in civilization. We evolved to live on the savannah in bands of 50 to 150 people, just constantly moving and not having possessions. And so by putting us by settling down, growing our food, and owning land and settling into nation states and all this, civilization is not, whatever we have constructed is not the world that we built for ourselves, or not that we evolved to live in. And so the fact that we are irrational, that might be a reasonable conclusion based on what we're doing. We're destroying the planet, and that's not gonna help anybody. But the argument I would make is that we are perfectly rational creatures for the world that we were evolved to live in, but we are irrational creatures in the world that we constructed, admittedly, but that is not the world that we evolved to live in.
And the other problem is that our selfish interests and our collective interests are often misaligned. And what makes sense for us to do as an individual that's rational is irrational collectively. Right.
But that wasn't true when we were in smaller bands.
That's right.
Because your personal interest was tied up in everybody's success.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So that's problematic.
So what if we do the Resuscitate the TYT book club? Do you want to do Civilized to Death?
I do. I got a head start. I read it. I have things I could say about it.
Will you look into the camera and say you will read this book?
I will read the book. Where's the camera? I'll read the book.
But you can comment if you want. Let us know if you think you'd like to see the TYT Book Club come back, and if there are other books that you want to hear or want us to cover. And then I'll try to figure out a way to if the company won't give me a platform to do anything with the book club, then maybe work it into weeks when one of you isn't here or something like that, so we can make it happen, because I think people would really enjoy it. And it's fun, speaking of collective action, to read books together and talk about them. And it also encourages you to read where you might not otherwise. So, all right, what's our time left, Craig? We got 3 minutes. Well, anybody got anything else we want to, or are we just gonna cut out early?
Cut out early.
Yeah, we're gonna cut out early. That's right. That's right. We have a whole weekend ahead of us. It's Friday, man. Let's do this.
Yeah, right.
Oh wait, it's Thursday.
You know what? Just one quick little insight. Well, it's Where the Fuck is Steve-O segment. I will be in London the first week of December.
And what are you gonna do?
I'm doing some event for YouTube.
How long?
The event itself is like an hour, 2 hours. I'm there for the week, so I'm excited.
What are you gonna do while you're there? What do you want to do? You've been to London before, I assume.
I have.
And have you done all the touristy stuff?
I have.
Okay, so you've done the touristy stuff. What are you gonna do while you're there that either go back to do again?
This is the first trip that I'm bringing my wife.
Oh.
Yeah, first business trip where she's coming along. I threatened her. I said, if you don't come, I'm bringing another woman.
They're called birds.
Birds.
In England, yeah. She's a bird.
Yeah, so YouTube is being generous enough to pay for all my travel expenses, plus my wife's. So we're in.
All right, what would you do if you went to London?
A mix of the standard tourist stuff, and then try to do some I don't know.
I'm gonna definitely try to get to the countryside.
Okay.
Yeah, so I want to go to Cambridge. I haven't done that before. And last time we were in London, we did a lot of the touristy things, but we didn't get to do. There's some museum with all of Winston Churchill's papers from back when he was prime minister. So that museum is supposed to be awesome. So I'll check that out.
All right.
And I might go back to. What's that big church?
Westminster Abbey?
The Abbey, yeah.
Well, if you guys have any suggestions for Steve for what he can do,
write it in.
What he should do. If I were going to London, I would try to catch a West Ham United match, English Premier League soccer match, because they're. Are you kidding? Why
Definitely not doing that.
Why not? The atmosphere at an English Premier League soccer game, I mean, even if you're not a fan, it's an amazing experience. So I've heard.
Although I personally know the family that owns Manchester United. Maybe I could get them to give me special accommodations.
How do you know them?
Our kids are friends.
Could they get me tickets to see West Ham? Maybe I'll go over. That'd be weird. Yeah. Like, I know you own a different team, but I don't want to see that team. I don't care about that. I don't go all the way, hoof it up to Manchester. Forget about that. But in London, I like to see West Ham. No, I've heard. My cousin's husband was over in London. He went and saw Fulham play, even though they're not in the first tier. But he said it was an amazing experience. He doesn't care about soccer, but he said it was a great time. And super fun to get in the spirit of things.
I do agree with you. I think that might be fun, seeing the fans enjoy the game, because I don't like going to live sporting events generally, but that's a cultural experience that might be cool.
Yeah. Or you could do it just to make me jealous. If you told me that you went and you can get Russell Brand as a fan of West Ham, and you and Russell Brand hook up and go see West Ham United play, then I will definitely be very, very jealous.
Whatever it takes to make you jealous.
Yeah. See, there's the incentive. There you go. Okay. Don't do it. Please don't do it. That'll hurt me. All right. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Appreciate it. We love you. We love the Proud 19. You guys it's this little super secret club. We're all in. Don't tell anybody else, because they'll just try to fuck it up. So have a great weekend. We love you. We'll be back next week. But as always, stay strong.